All right. Oh, it works. Welcome everyone to the Vasa Innovation Center and also online to our event, Catalysing Innovation, the first day of the Vasa Future Festival. I'm really happy to see so many people here today. And why we are here, just about now 7 or 8 months ago, me, myself, Philipp Holtkamp, Antti Sinisalo over there, and Leena Kunttu have started at the University of Vaasa to strengthen the innovation and ecosystem activities of the university. And you will hear more about what we are doing soon. And we thought, after 7 months of working closely all together, it's time to come out and tell you who we are, what we are doing. But we also thought we bring some great people with us to really drive some concrete actions, because we very much believe in working together with the ecosystem, working with our partners, and not doing things on our own. So that's why we are here today. And I think we have a really interesting and exciting program together today with some really interesting speakers. And I won't take too much time, so we have more time for actually the interesting people to talk, not for me. We will start today with Tulla, who joined us actually from San Francisco. He is one of our, or may I say, the most successful in the terms of startups and innovation graduate of the University of Vaasa. And we were extremely lucky that he happened to be in Finland currently. So he immediately agreed to join us. And he will talk today about his journey, more or less, from the University of Vaasa to becoming a serial entrepreneur in Silicon Valley and everything else of the amazing stuff he's doing over there. Give a warm hand to Ari.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm on, number 4.
Yes.
Cool. Thank you so much for inviting me and connecting overall about just asking questions first about like what could Vasa do to initiate innovation, initiate entrepreneurship. And that's a topic that is really close to my heart. And also super excited to be here, seeing people, well, masked up people. But as you may know, US has been in a very strict lockdown for a long time. And California, I think we led the way where we really haven't seen many people. So if I feel kind of anxious about something, it's because I haven't seen more than like 10 people in a room for the last year and a half. And it's still going on in California and the US. You know, Corona, COVID is a pretty serious deal there. I mean, we have I think almost 100,000 cases a day in the US today, and we are not testing a whole lot. So we are not out of this yet. But hope this year will turn out to be a bit more normal than the last year. Could I get the slides, please? So I can stab in. So my goal today was to just talk about a little bit of my pathway from Kempele, Oulu into Vaasa University and then onward into Silicon Valley. And I think I try to maybe more inspire and maybe give a couple of pointers. So I was structuring the talk today in a way that I'll start by talking about what. What might be interesting. It's about what people have done, what happened. But often behind the what is the why. And that is a lot more interesting. Like why people do some things. Why people are driven by different things. And then lastly, I try to talk about a little bit on so what. So what means why does it matter? And that's often the most interesting thing. And I try to give maybe 4 or 5 predictions that I fundamentally believe will be real in the next 10 years. That you might know or you might not know, but we can then debate about it on a break. So what, so what, what, why, and so what. So first about the what. I mean, I was very lucky in a sense that I lived in a household where I was able to access computers at a very young age. So I got the first PC when I was 6 years old. Then I was able to connect to the internet 94. So I was actually with Oulu University, because I think my best friend's sister had a boyfriend who studied in the Oulu University, and he was a sysops. So he gave me and my friend access to the Oulu University network in mid-90s. And that was, of course, very early in the internet, as you all know. And what I did most of my high school days and even after, I played mainly games, and I was involved in a lot of these early online games called mods. I was helping to build one, and I became one of the top players in the world. And I spent probably 10,000 hours. That's the magic number of hours to learn something well in playing games. And I think it had a tremendous impact on my future. Then 98, I got accepted to University of Vaasa, and I felt that it's kind of nice, small university. I fell in love with the city when I visited. I went to Helsinki, I went to Turku, I went to Vaasa, and I somehow liked the Vaasa campus, and ended up here. And I studied business, marketing, communication. I also started to do another master's in computer science. So that time Vaasa got linked with TKK in Helsinki, and you were also able to work and do your double masters. I never finished my computer science degree. Year 2000, I spent one semester in the US. I went to a small town called Emporia in Kansas. And that was the only university you were able to go to US and study as a program. We had something like 6 people from Vaasa, 4 people from University of Helsinki, and Kauppakorkeakoulu as well. And that was kind of the beginning of being able to go from Finland in the US as an exchange student in the university. And that had a profound impact on me. To kind of, I don't know, I didn't fall in love with the US, but I felt that there's something really cool, and that was the time I first visited San Francisco with my buddies. And then 2000, I was doing my double masters, and my roommates, they founded a company called Visual Web. Some of you might know the company. They used to be located in the nearby university, and they started, I think, 99 or 2000, grew to be pretty decent sized company working on intranets and publishing systems. And that was interesting because I was able to see the company very, very early. So I was probably there with my roommate and the 2 founders, and we were building the business plan and helping the company to get going. So I got to be in a startup by accident very, very early. And I think that time it wasn't very common in Vaasa that you have these tech startups popping up. So big impact on me again to see up close and personal what it takes to build something new. And then I graduated in 2001. I ended up working in Helsinki for a company called BAT, British American Tobacco. And while I went there, I mean, I have a pretty technical background. I loved coding. I loved anything to do with tech. But I ended up with BAT because they had this program where you were able to go from one country to another for 2.5 years. So I went there, I started to work on a couple projects, and I was able to work in UK, in London. I worked in Lausanne, Switzerland. I had a stint in Stockholm, Copenhagen, even I worked in Iceland. So pretty cool to graduate and go work in a global environment from the get-go. And I got very lucky there. Because they were asking company-wide, like, who knows something about snus? And I'm a hockey player by trade, and of course, when you play hockey, a lot of people who use snus. And I waved my hand, and I had been in the company for a year, and I was handpicked to run the marketing for a expansion of Lucky Strike brand into this new category globally. And suddenly you are half reporting to chief marketing officer of the whole company of 100,000 people. You end up hanging out more in London than at home, and really got exposed to something really different, what the global company looks like, and really be able to build a project that had hundreds of millions of investment behind it. So it elevated the game completely from that perspective. And that led me into then to be headhunted at Nokia. Nokia was building a new gaming platform called N-Gage. Some of you might remember the side-talking device that Nokia was ridiculed quite a bit. But we were very early. We built the first gaming device on a phone. We built the first app store. We built the first, a lot of things first there. And we built great games, and we worked with some great people. I was first running kind of the marketing side of things, then I ended up running the first-party publishing side, and that was the chance for me to kind of get to really play in a global scheme and a global scale. So 2008, I migrated to the US to build a new unit for Nokia in the heart of Silicon Valley in San Francisco. We had recently bought a company called, one part of Sega Dreamcast console that became the backbone of the N-Gage platform. And there we wanted to build a new gaming division as well. So I went to kind of build that there. And that was pretty interesting to go from being in Finland at the head office of Nokia, and we all know how big Nokia was and is still today for Finland. But that time, that was the heyday of Nokia. We had 45% of market share in smartphones. We were selling 350 million devices a year. We had 1 billion people using Nokia device. We were the #1 brand in the world. We were the #1 brand in China, in India, in most countries in Europe, out of every brand in the world. So it was really cool. And then you go to Silicon Valley and nobody has any idea what Nokia is. And you can't hire anyone. People are like, what is this thing? And so forth. And then a year later, you go and, of course, we were very kind of tapped into the world of Apple and Google and so forth, as you have to be there. We went and we noticed that Apple is bringing up this new phone. So me and some other people, we went to buy the first phones when they came out on the first day, and we shipped them to Finland, to the head office. And you know the books and the quotes and stuff like that. People didn't take it seriously. And I had the phone in the first day it came out in the US, and I was like, holy hell, I mean, this is going to kill us. And that happened. So we don't need to go deep in that story, but it was very interesting to be in a company when it goes down and when we lose the market share. Sometimes you learn more in a downward spiral than in an upward spiral, because last decade Nokia could do no wrong. It was all going up and up and up, success after success. But clearly we didn't have the understanding of the platforms, of the software. We were a hardware company that made it too complicated for ourselves. Then 2011, that was the time when Nokia decided to go with Microsoft, that famous deal that Stephen Elop was orchestrating together with his last teammates. And in the end, hindsight, it actually might have been a good deal, but at that time it looked horrible. And me and my co-founder for Better Doctor, the company we started 2011, said that that's enough. So my co-founder had spent about 10 years in the Linux-based platform side at Nokia. He was one of the first employees on the Maemo and MeeGo platform that ended up being the N90, N90 something device that was the first Linux-based smartphone. And he was super unhappy because his platform didn't win. We went for Microsoft. He left, and then I decided to leave with him as well. And we started this company in finding doctors in the US. So completely different than mobile devices or mobile platforms or mobile games or whatnot we were doing before. A bit more about that in a moment. And then 2018, 7 years later, we had built a decent-sized business. We had about 70 employees. We were based in few cities in the US. We had a pretty robust business running, mainly selling data to health insurance companies and different health entities in the country. We were powering about 3,000 companies with the doctor information. So we went from being B2C, a consumer-driven marketplace for healthcare, into a data platform for enterprises. Long story, we can talk about that later, not the topic of today. But 2018, we connected with a couple of investors from the private equity side, and they gave us a deal that we could say no, and we ended up selling the company for private equity at that time. And in that moment, instead of taking the money and running, I felt that there was still some, couple miles left in our tank. So we actually took a lead of the new company. So the private equity fund had already bought a company called Quest Analytics, and then they bought Better Doctor, and I took a lead of the whole company. And once I took a lead, we also went on and we bought one small corner of United Healthcare. United Healthcare is the world's biggest healthcare company. They have about 1 million people, and we bought like a tiny corner of them into Quest as well. So it was about 300 people, mid-market company, kind of like a public company in Finland, but in the US, a fairly small private company that I was running for 2 years. And then last year, I had a 2-year ticket with the Quest. I ran the company for 2 years. We found a new CEO, and I gave the reins to the new person. He's doing great work. I'm very happy about that, and hope to see the company go public next few years. And I decided to start my next company. Actually, I was planning to take the whole year off, and we got a good start. We spent the time, going RV around the whole country of US. We spent a month in Tahiti, and we were just about to head to Japan when the corona hit, and of course that kind of changed our plans, and I decided to fast track a bit and start my next company called ELO. And then lastly, what we decided to do also, and what we're doing this year a little bit, is that with my wife we have been investing to companies for the last decade, and we are investors in about 50 different private companies. Some of them are doing really, really, really well. And we decided this year to make that a bit more official, so we are building a new fund called Do Good Ventures to invest in companies that are focusing on making the world a better place in a way, or making people's lives better. So we invest in healthcare, nutrition, food, and we also invest in gamification, or using gamification in a positive way, like teaching people a new way, and so forth. And that's going to be like a long-term thing, nothing that I spend too much time, but maybe like 1 day a month I spend on the investment side. So that's about the what. And then I think let's talk about the why, because that's, as I said, maybe more interesting. So as I said already, for me, if I think about one thing that helped me most, was the fact that I spent the 10,000 hours with the computers, with the games early on when I was 15 to 18 or 19, whatever years old. And of course, I'm greatly thankful for my parents who were paying their phone bills. The early, you might remember the modems early days, you had to pay per minute as you pay for the phone. I think they paid something like 200 euros a month for 5 years probably on my use of the bandwidth. So that was a great thing, and they never really complained about it too much. But this was a big deal, and I think if you think about a lot of people today in Finland who have built great companies, many of them are from the same generation as I am. So I'm friends with a lot of the people who founded some of the biggest companies in Finland, who are the startups that are now worth billions of dollars. And we all met in this demo scene at the assembly in Helsinki, and in these gaming communities, for example. So it's a pretty small group of people. So the second why is maybe not less obvious, but my parents always had a saying when I was growing up that they don't want to spend the money on the new car or the newer house, but they rather spend the money on travel. And this is actually I took a photo when I was in my home last week, and it's a map of the world. There is like a massive map that the people put pins on a map where they have been. And I think my mom is leading the pack now. She has like 110 pins or something. So it's been in 110 countries. I'm derailing badly because I've been kind of in the US for too long now lately. I think I'm like 70 or 60, whatever. But they always really wanted to spend the time to travel and see the world. And I think I had been in like 40 countries before I was 18. And that gave a lot of appreciation to me about the world and people and the difference of people around the world. So huge impact for me. And in a way, I always wanted to work in tech. I knew that because I had that background. But after the travels, I always wanted to see the world. So I, on purpose, was going to be abroad when I studied in Vaasa. I, on purpose, wanted to go to a company that I didn't really love, the tobacco anyway. I never smoked a cigarette. But, for me, it was a pathway to get to global business and get to travel and see the world a bit more. And it's always been kind of trying, like, how do I get to a place where I can play at the highest level? It's the same as, I played hockey before. I'm too small as a defender. I was never fast enough, but I was pretty good. And some of my friends, they went to NHL. And when you play hockey, you don't want to play in the National League in Finland, you want to play in NHL. And that's kind of what I see when you want to build companies, you want to build it in the Silicon Valley, where you have most competition and where you have most talent together in one place and sparking ideas every day. And the last why is maybe the most fundamental thing that has been shaping my thinking and myself as a person the most. So it was year 2000. I think we were in London with my wife at the time, and she self-diagnosed herself with the thyroid tumor. A few days later, we are back in Vaasa, and she's been operated. Luckily, we clean everything off before anything bad happens. But it leads into this sort of classical problem of autoimmune diseases, hormone imbalances, and medications that are difficult to come by with. And we spent about a decade after that to try to fix the situation, because the problem was that we can never get pregnant with the conditions she had. And after about 10, 11 years, we were able to reverse it to a level that we were able to get pregnant. And in the US, we finally, we used IVF rounds, quite a few rounds to get everything done. And unfortunately, the first son was born 2 days too early to survive. And basically, nothing is worse than being the dad, like seeing your newborn, not make it in your arms. And that really changed me fundamentally and led me to work in healthcare. And spend my time not on the fun stuff of like video games that I love and all this other stuff, but I wanted to really focus on things that can make a difference to people's lives. And that's why we started The Better Doctor. The idea was that let's help people find the right doctor when they need care. And I think for you guys, if you haven't been in the US or in a other healthcare system like that, it's hard to imagine how difficult it is to cope with that. Because you can access to 1 million doctors, but you don't know which of them are the right for you, or which of them can help you in a way you need help. So it was a very meaningful thing to build that company, and I'm super excited and proud about the fact that today the Better Doctor and the Quest Analytics is helping about 200 million people every year, 200 million people every year in the US to help find doctors. So that was a big legacy I think we have on that. And the new company, Elo, is all about helping people with the right nutrition. There's a massive problem today in the world with obesity, diabetes, hypertension, and so forth. And we are dying younger today than we did. And the first generation, I think, is the generation after me who will likely not live as long as the previous one. That's the first time in human history that happens, and we have to do something about it. So we are trying to build a better way to offer people food and nutrition that can help them to overcome disease and also stay healthy. So those are the whys. What about then the so what? This is in my mind the most important, because there has to be a learning in these. So first one that I think I've been following a lot and I'm a big believer in is the digitalization. And this is a word that you all have heard for a decade or 20 years already probably in Finland. I'll talk about it a bit more in a different angle. The second is healthcare is data. I mean, it's really interesting that I have these wearable devices. Aura is a ring that is exciting, sleep tracker. Apple Watch gives a lot of data. I have a Whoop here, that is another one, like a recovery tracker. And I used to have a glucose monitor on for last year and a half. So I track a lot of data about myself, and that data can be extremely powerful to understand likelihood of illness, understand what should be due to you. And the doctor is a pretty bad at analyzing data. Like if you take all the data I have today and you give it to a doctor, they can do nothing about it. We have to employ and deploy some type of AI, better systems for understanding what's wrong with people. More about that in a second. And then lastly, nutrition and behavior change. We all know how to eat right. We all know how to be healthy, but it's pretty hard to do because the world is stacked against us. If you go to a grocery store, even in Finland, most of the food that is promoted in your eye level is food that you should never eat. And that's kind of annoying. If you open TV, most of the ads in TV about food and nutrition are food that you should never eat or drink. That's kind of annoying way how we handle this. So let's talk about the digitalization first. And this is a topic I've been giving too many talks in the last few years, and I give more and more until people understand it. But there's one thing that I love the most in this topic, and it's this S-curve. I don't know if it's McKinsey or Boston Consulting Group who developed this idea. So you have a maturity, and then you have evolution over time. And of course, healthcare is the topic I mainly talk about lately. So healthcare is today in the beginning of the S-curve. So it means that we've been doing digitalization for maybe 20 years. We have some things now online. Most things are still offline. Nothing really talks to each other. And you all read the news. Finland has massive problems with the Epic integration in Helsinki. I have many of my friends working on that. It's a mess. I think here also people are talking about using some sort of a Epic type of integration to get the data together in one place. It's very difficult to do. So where are different industries if you look at this? So let's take a look at automotive. We all have a car. How many of you have an electric car? There's one. Okay, so one person. 10 years from today, same question, it's going to be 80% or 90%. That's going to happen. But what is happening now in automotive that is even more fundamental is that, think about this. In last 20 years, we've been going from a world where it's all combustible engines to electric, probably going to be predominant new car already in 5 years in most parts of the developed world. And then at the same time, we are seeing the cars going from, I'm driving a stick-shift car, maybe an automatic car, to a self-driving car. I mean, that's a pretty fundamental thing that nobody would have even believed 20 years ago, that we are talking about now having a license in the US in most cities where you can have an self-driving car with no person driving it, as your taxi, for example. And then at the same time, the car ownership, you don't need to own a car anymore. You can use Uber. I mean, in the US, in every city, you can click a button and get an Uber or Lyft or whatever there is in 5 minutes or less, and pay maybe 3 times less than you pay for taxi in Finland today. So it's pretty interesting that everything has completely shifted. Who are the companies now dominating, or who are planning to dominate the industry? It's like Uber, it's like Tesla. So companies that didn't exist 20 years ago. And automotive is in the middle of the chasm. Things are now moving really quickly, but we still don't know what it will look like in 10 years from today. Think about banking. Banking went through most of this already. Just in the US, something like 1 million people don't work in banks anymore. They were displaced by online banking and mobile apps. I think there are something like 50,000 branches closed in the US. It all moved into online. Today, money is moving online. How many of you own Bitcoins? Only a handful, maybe. You should probably own maybe more. There's maybe a big bonus there. I bought Bitcoin at $4 a piece. They're now $40,000. It's a good investment, I can say. But it's moving all online now in a way that we don't even have money in the next 10 years. Nobody will see a bill of a dollar or euro in the next 10 years. Fundamental shift, completely digitized. And then think about media. Of course, we all know this. We used to have media in our hand. How many of you get the daily paper? Okay, maybe a handful. How many of you got the daily paper 10 years ago? Probably like 90%. So this is again a shift that has happened gradually, but fundamentally changing everything in our life related to media. Who are the media companies today? Apple, Facebook, Netflix. That's pretty interesting. They are valued more than the whole media empires together if you combine them globally. That's pretty fundamental. And of course, lastly, travel. I mean, who has been in a travel agent for the last decade? I mean, probably not many of us. So travel was the first to move because it's a global industry and you have to connect people in different places. And it's a very prone for digitalization. So think about this for a second. What will the healthcare look like when it will be at the same place as travel is today or media is today? It will be fundamentally different. And then, of course, in the public sector is still behind healthcare. And public sector moving online. We don't really know what it will look like, but we can look at Estonia. There are good examples there that are quite exciting to see. So, healthcare, when it moves there, I think it will be fundamentally different. And just a couple predictions, like what will it look like? So, it is all about data. So, if you think about the most valuable companies today, they are all almost data companies. Out of the 5 most valuable companies, 4 are data companies. Think about Amazon, Google, Facebook. And Tesla even is a data company. Even if you think them as a car manufacturer, they're really a data company. So it's pretty interesting. And this is, by the way, a Economist cover from 2017 already. So it's been going on for a while. And then, of course, if you think about Google, it's a company that, I think everybody in Silicon Valley has a love and hate relationship. I mean, they're kind of awesome, but they're also doing stupid stuff all the time. 2019, we all had these, big books with information in our bookshelves, and there's a door-to-door sales guy selling them to us. And I think we all bought. We all have Britannica or Spectrum or whatever we have in Finland. And then 2017 came Google with this simple mission statement. We want to index all the world information. And 2020, they have done it and more. I don't know if you know, but they basically have read and digitized almost all the books in the world in 200 languages. Why did they do it? To have the book data there, the text? No, to train the algorithm to understand what's in the books and actually build a better translation tools. So if you now talk to your Google Assistant in Finnish and they translate to English or Hindi or whatever language, it is done mainly by the data from the books. Because there is a book written in every language and translated. They took that book and they look at all the different translations and they learn from those. Multiply that by 10 million and you have a system that is pretty smart. By the way, I know some of the people who built this algorithm at Google, and it's kind of fun. I was there last year talking with them, and one of the guys said, I don't actually know how it works. It's just learning itself now and leaping over languages. And the team building it doesn't know how it works. So these are the new AI neural networks that are getting beyond human comprehension. Think about what those will look like in a decade from now. And of course, now Google is not only, you don't only type to Google, you speak to Google. Google listens, Google is there ambiently. Google owns Nest, for example, the thermostat, following, how people live in their life. It's pretty scary stuff. And then what is happening in the healthcare side? I mean, my prediction is that, there will be an AI assistant on every doctor's hand or however it will be, built, that is giving you real-time insight of the person with all the data they can come up with. My data file today of healthcare is about 4 terabytes of data. That's a lot of data that is hard to understand without having a good enough AI and an algorithm. Okay, what about the nutrition and the behavior change? This is an area that, like I said, is very close to my heart because we spend a lot of time tackling this in my family. And I've been in a very specific kind of, diet myself for almost 20 years. I don't really eat much meat, no sugar, no wheat, or any type of, grains. And that's the diet that is now becoming kind of hot diet. But, we've been doing it for 17 years or so. It makes you feel pretty good. So what's happening today, and this is US data, you can take the data and look at Finland, and Finland's maybe 5 years behind the US, but the same numbers are going to be here in about 5 to 10 years. 75% of Americans are overweight. And not only overweight, but if you look at the red there, red is the obese. Obese means that your BMI is over 30, and it means that you're likely not going to live through 75 or later. Half the people are obese today. It's pretty important point. 49% of people try to lose weight every year. 90% are not doing it, they fail. Those are pretty grim numbers. And then, of course, the other point is that the diet-related chronic conditions are the #1 cause of death in the US. So we have about 600,000 people who died in COVID last year, or so 500,050, whatever. So double of that, died because of diet-related conditions already. And of course, most people who died from COVID had an underlying issue that is one of these. 60% of people have one or more chronic condition. Think about type 2 diabetes, hypertension, and so forth. We spend $1.7 trillion. I mean, it's a big number. I mean, that's maybe like something like 40 times the Finnish healthcare cost that we spend only on chronic condition management, not healing anyone, managing them and giving people medication and stuff like that. It's about 50% of the US healthcare cost. And it's, by the way, more than any other country in the world has a healthcare spend. I think it's more than China's healthcare spend today, only on managing these conditions. A lot of money. And 1 million people die each year. And then what I'm predicting is that 2030, food will actually be considered medicine, and it will be subsidized by the employers, by government, and by the health insurance companies. And when that happens, it will change this whole thing quite dramatically. Because based on calculations by people much smarter than me, $1 invested in this stuff will take $3 away of the healthcare system. So you could maybe unleash $500 billion of money that doesn't need to be spent anymore in the chronic condition management stuff. So pretty big deal. And then everyone, I think, will have a health-focused wearable device. That's not going to be like a one thing that does something. There's a new ring in development today in a lab level that can do blood measurement through skin, real time. There is a device that can do wrist-based real-time glucose monitoring. So in 10 years, we're going to see a huge evolution in this, and also in home monitoring, home testing, and so forth. So you don't need to go to a doctor's office. You don't have to rely on the cholesterol, LDL number. By the way, LDL number might actually be meaningless based on the latest science. Cholesterol might be almost meaningless as well. I can talk about it later in a break if you want to know more. But this is something that I think will happen, and I think luckily Finland is really leading the way. I mean, I'm super excited. I was one of the first investors in Oura Ring, and they are now a billion-dollar company. So it's been amazing to follow the journey. They are from my hometown, Kempele, and known the guys for quite a while. So that's been a really, really exciting Finnish startup in this spectrum. And in my life, I mean, like, yes, we had these struggles for a long time with our health, reproductive health, even with with the first baby. But luckily, we were able to spend the time and the money and the effort and fix the issues. And we have now 2 healthy kids. Max and Mia. Max is 6, and Mia is turning 3 in a moment. So that's my talk today. Any questions or comments or thoughts? Please. For healthcare. Yeah, so I mean, healthcare has I think the biggest dilemma is, so why is healthcare so low on the innovation S-curve of digitalization? It's because healthcare is regulated different than most of the places. So, for example, the data transportability, data privacy are really big issues. And the other one is that healthcare tends to be run in a local level. Same in Finland, same in the US, where you have a state level and even local city level players who are working on building different standard for how do we track this data. And I always say that these things can't happen if you don't have the data in one place. So you first have to go to cloud. And we've been now going to cloud in healthcare for 20 years already, and we are finally getting close. But before you're in a cloud, you can never be able to do any type of data mining, any type of AI, any type of interoperability properly. And that's the key issue. And then, of course, the last point is that in healthcare, the doctor tells you, the patient, what to do. And we do it. We don't question the doctor's word. They give you medication, you eat the medication. So it's a very interesting kind of old school system, a bit like law. Your lawyer tells you that you better now say that you actually robbed the bank, you better say you did, otherwise you're going to be, in the prison for many more years. So it's the same thing that, you have somebody who knows kind of how the system works and they tell you what to do and you do that. That is also breaking now quite dramatically. Any other questions, please?
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Kristian Schrey from the Expo. In the end, you talked about nutrition and behavior, and quite, to me, an ambitious goal that by 2030 it could actually be government subsidized and used as medicine. So I think in the past year and a half here also we have focused quite little on behavior and nutrition combating COVID or Corona, for example. So how do you think we can make such a change in such a short period of time when we see what's happening in the world today?
A great question. I think the COVID has been a catalyst like never before. So think about 2000, there was the bubble burst on the internet stocks. Some of the best companies were founded 2001, 2002, 2003. 2008, we had the bubble in the housing market. Some of the best companies were founded 2009, 8, and 10. And I think now we are seeing a much more massive shift of behavior change that happens to people when we actually have been at home. We've been cooking a lot more at home. We have, people say that, I gained my COVID-19 kilos, or whatever people say. And that's often the case. Some people got healthier. But I think everybody is thinking about health a lot more, and they're thinking about these underlying conditions that are making you vulnerable. I bet, if you are masking up today, you probably believe that you have a reason to mask up today because you have an underlying condition. And of course, in the Delta variant, it's nothing to play with, so we should probably mask up anyway indoor. But that, I think, will be the case. Like government, the healthcare system as a system, the people are now ready for something new. And I think that will speed up these things a lot. And when government writes a new law in the US in healthcare, big things happen. That happened with Obamacare. It happened before that with Medicaid and Medicare. Those are the poor and elderly people care programs in the US. US healthcare system today, by the way, is 50%, over 50% paid by government today. Most people think in the US that it's like 90% private market. No, it's 51% government market today. And it has been slowly growing that way because of these programs. And why it happens, lastly, is that it has to happen. It is unsustainable to have 9% growth of spend, and you accumulate 9% growth on growth on growth, a decade more in healthcare. We spend $5 trillion in the US in healthcare. That's going to be 40% of the US GDP. Finland spends today 15%, 1.5, in healthcare. Europe spends on average 14% in healthcare. So that has to happen. Something has to happen. Please.
Following on from the last question, we're reading a lot about the future of work, about hybrid work, work from anywhere. How do you think that's going to affect entrepreneurial activity in a place like Silicon Valley? Do you think it's going to erode location-based advantages, or how do you see the prognosis for the next few years?
That's a massive question, and people are asking that a lot. So my new company, we are roughly 30 people today, and we have, I think, 6 people are in the Bay, and the rest are around the world. I don't even know where everybody is probably today. I don't really care. I think the COVID had an impact on us thinking about health differently and nutrition, massive impact. Even more impact for work. Time and place are now taken away. At least for me. I mean, I said to my wife that I will never think time and place again in my life. And it made me feel like a superhero. I can do whatever I want now. I mean, I can. We are now in 7 weeks in Finland. I'm working all the time. We're going to be a month in Tahiti in December. And I don't need to tell people. I don't need to tell my investors or my board members or my team even where. I'll work where I'm, and that's it. But it's massive because the cost of living around the world is so different, and the talent pools are all around. There's a great talent in Romania and Poland and Finland, many places for tech, for example. Why don't you tap those talents instead of trying to hire people in the Silicon Valley? And I hired maybe 1,000 people in the last 15 years in the Silicon Valley, and today I want to hire a data scientist, a caliber person we need in our things that are quite difficult. We pay about $280,000 base salary, plus then all the bonus and stuff like that. That's a person who is like 30 years old or 28 years old, maybe 5 years of experience. $280,000. That's a lot of money, by the way. I don't know how many people make that in Vaasa, but that's an average. And I hire the same kind of person in Finland, and we pay a lot less. But we're going to pay a lot more than they might make otherwise here, because we look at the global market and we pay the average there. But God knows, we don't allow Zoom or we don't allow Skype or whatever we use here, YouTube. But it's been pretty good. And I, for example, with the small kids, I used to travel a lot. We had 5 offices at Quest. I traveled 100 days a year around the country in the US. Now I haven't traveled at all. And ask the kids how much they like that today than they liked that before. I think I'm getting like a 9 now. I got maybe 4 before. So that's a big deal for anyone who has kids, for example. Great question. Cool, one more. This is awesome, like people to move around. I like it. Very healthy.
Yes, there was a...
Yeah, it's on.
There was a point earlier made about regulation that perhaps different countries are on different levels of regulation. So different countries might find themselves in different places on this S-curve. So how do we know where to draw the line between regulation and innovation? Do you have any ideas about that?
Yeah, I think it's a big topic, and of course you can take different things or different industries, and you have a different viewpoint. Should we regulate healthcare and drug development and things like vaccine development? I think we all say yes. Should we regulate the food safety and things like that? I think we all would say yes. Should we regulate somehow agriculture or manufacturing from the environmental perspective? I think we all would say yes. But then there are many other things that it's a lot harder to say how much we should regulate. But I'm a big fan of the model they have in Estonia myself. Not knowing all about it, but having a lot of my friends who founded the companies there. They actually are residing there as an e-citizens. Some people live there now because they built a system that is pretty interesting from the perspective of government and pretty low regulation, but like equal taxing more or less and so forth, making it kind of level playing field for everybody. I think in Finland we are trying to maybe make things a bit too difficult. We only have 5 million people. By the way, that's less than I have a 50-mile radius from my home in San Francisco. So it's not that many people, and I think we should just copy the best ideas outside and implement them in a sensible way, and not try to be too complicated. We tend to be a bit too complicated at times.
I think Uber is still not allowed in Finland, for example.
Yeah, I think you can do Uber in Helsinki, but it's kind of like a pseudo okay. But the taxi guys, they have a say, and they need to be employed, and they need to have the Beamers and Mercedes-Benz, and they need to be able to have the sausage at the store. But they're gonna die away, and the next breed will rather drive Uber than own the taxi medallion and so forth. It's a silly thing that this will go away. Not to say that the Uber model is totally fine, where we are kind of exploiting people who come from outside a city to drive in a city and even have concession and stuff like that. So I don't love Uber. I know them from the very beginning. And I have dear friends who built the company, but you can read the book about it. It's not a great example of a company because they take it too far. Most companies are better than they are. Okay, this is the last one. Then we are on the time.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a question since we are talking about the healthcare sector and the digitalization. And of course, we could see the important role of AI, what AI is playing. But Now the emerging disruptive technology such as blockchain, which is now heading towards the healthcare sector, and it's close to my heart as well, the health sector itself. So my question would be, how do you see its role? I mean, knowing the immutable structure of blockchain and also the concerns with the regulations and compliance and privacy of patients' data and so on. So how do you see its role in healthcare?
I think blockchain will likely find the first real big use case in healthcare because it's really well built and suited for patient data storage. So if you think about blockchain, you can store my data in a node, and then I can access it, and I can share other people access rights to it in a way I want. So it can be a very powerful tool for it. Of course, today the speed of transactions is too slow. The amount of data stored in healthcare is too big because we have imaging data, video, stuff like that. We can't really do that really well yet. But I think blockchain is just one of these things that will have a massive impact. I think AI will have a much bigger impact sooner because, like I said about the Google example, and I could give you 50 examples like that, but AI is something fundamentally new that our mind can't comprehend. I mean, most of us can't understand the blockchain, and I don't really claim I can even understand fully all the ideas people have, but the AI is so fundamentally different because I can take now data that we have of a small number of people, or the patients we have at Elo. I can take that data now and throw it into a simple AI model. It will turn out to be something far better than any human being can do with that data in a matter of days. And I mean, this is the normal models that you can get for free as an open source. So, I mean, there's no way a doctor can be as good as AI on diagnosing, analyzing, even maybe 2-3 years from today. And 10 years from now, because just one more example that is maybe mind-boggling to you. Somebody told me recently that Google is writing code with AI in a certain part of the business. And in certain parts of business, most of the code today is written by AI, not by human beings. Think about when this happens and you get to the 90% of code written by AI. Nobody can even look at the code anymore and understand how it works. So we are really giving the keys to AI and algorithms today already. And that is fundamentally going to be, we can all study in schools and all this stuff, but you can't study this stuff. This will happen, and a few people are leading it, and it will impact all of our lives more than anything else, I think, in the last 1,000 years. And it will happen soon. And I think many of us will not work in a way we do 20 years from today because of AI. Many of our things we do are going to be obsolete because AI can do it 100 times better. I think we're going to be farming, biodynamic farming is going to be very cool stuff happening in 20 years in Finland, I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ari. Really, really interesting. And I hope you stay around a little while, so if there are more questions during the break, or I don't know how long he's around, but feel free to approach him during the breaks or even afterwards. Next in the program, we will actually have our team of the university to present what we have been doing the last 7 months or so, and what we are planning to do in the future. Just a little sneak peek of the kind of services, the kind of approaches we want to implement at the university and in the Vasa ecosystem to strengthen the Vasa startup ecosystem, to build more of a fertile ground for startups to grow here, especially from the university, from the staff members and the students. So I have here some handheld microphones, for example, for Leena. And Antti will come very soon as well with his headset microphone. And then we will get started. Just wait a few seconds for Antti to get settled with the microphone. Antti, you can otherwise also use the handheld microphone. And Peter, you could start the presentation, if you can. All right.
Okay. The university presentation, actually.
No, that's Stefan's.
That's Stefan's, yeah.
1 second, just some issues to find the right presentation. While they are still looking, I can just again introduce ourselves, maybe. My name is Philipp Holtkamp, again, for you who weren't here at the beginning, and my colleagues Leena, Kunttu, and Antti Sinisalo. And Antti will now start to kick you off a little bit with the background of our team, our aims, what we will do. Then Leena will take you through a little bit the activities we have been doing already, and I will take over to look a bit in the future what will come next. So first we hear Antti.
All right, thank you, Philipp. Thank you, Ari, for the really inspiring presentation. I will actually start by taking us back approximately 10 months when our team was first established and together. We were given a task to create an innovation and entrepreneurial profile to Vaasa University, alongside its education and research. So we were faced basically with a question that how do you create a university-based environment that is supporting innovation, that is supporting creation of new companies, new ventures. So we started planning together with the team, considering different options. And pretty soon we decided that we want to focus on open innovation and ecosystems as the main sort of basic principles of our work. We want to create a community-led approach, which is driven by university grassroots, by the students, by alumni, by the local companies, entrepreneurs. And we want to create sort of ecosystem that is based on strong partnerships of trust between the community and the university. To create an inspiring and supportive environment to create innovations and new companies. Okay, quickly about my background. I used to be the CEO of VTT Ventures for almost 10 years. We were advising and helping founders to create technology companies at the research center. We created a portfolio of approximately 20 companies, really highly valued at this point, even in hundreds of millions, one of the most successful ones. So that's the background and the experience that I bring to the Vaasa University ecosystem. We talked about the ecosystem, which is particularly important for the new entrepreneurs. We sometimes describe it with a metro map, with train stations and metro lines. And this is the part where the innovators and the entrepreneurs have different journeys. Each of them a different journey, but they need the support of the whole ecosystem. They need the support of the funding agencies, the investors. They need advice from business mentors, from legal experts. They need access to early feedback from the customers. So this is something that our team wants to strive, expand, and we want to make sure that the entrepreneurs know how to navigate in this ecosystem so that they get the support that they need in each step of the way. Our team is ready to help everybody, all of you, to create this strong ecosystem. We want to support the personal commitment of the innovators. We want to coach them through their journey. We promote co-creation, multidisciplinary teams to identify and solve the right problems. And we think that innovation can come from different sources. It can come from the sort of passion of the entrepreneur. It can come from external market signals. It can come from new research findings. But either way, our team is ready to support in finding the right partners, the collaborators, to get that innovation into the market. And we think that the entrepreneurial journey doesn't have to be a trial and error process. You don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. We believe that the blueprint of creating new ventures actually exists. And our team and the partners, we have collectively a very long experience in helping and giving advice to founders of successful companies. So we have used this knowledge base to create a playbook that we have divided into 4 phases, each including different tasks and KPIs that can be used as the blueprint to take the early ideas and the research results to the market successfully. So this way we can bridge the gap between the early ideas and the not so mature research results to the market. So this is what I wanted to say about the sort of starting point of our activities and our plans. And now I give the floor to Leena to tell about our current activities.
Yes, okay. Good afternoon. So my name is Leena Kunttu and good afternoon. My name is Leena Kunttu, and about my background, I have worked in Nokia company as an innovation manager in camera area. And I have also worked in university, so I have experience from both sides. About our eco team. So we started last autumn, and what we have done, we have support with research funding applications, and the aim of our team is to bring more innovation mindset to the research and education. So, for example, this year we are going to participate to develop more the doctoral school so that more research results will be commercialized in future. Other activities we have done, we have participated in different events and give our codes also in different courses and all these kind of activities. And in future we would like to see that there will be a lot of more what is now situation with research commercialization. So we are hoping many new startups starting during the next years. Okay.
All right. Some other activities that we have started already. One which is very interesting, you can see it in the top line middle. It's piloting in collaboration with students. So in the Vaasa region, we have quite a few small companies that do more or less the work. They get the specification from the big ones, from Wärtsilä, ABB, etc., and they just fulfill the specifications. But many of them are at the verge of breaking into, okay, we want to be innovative, we want to create our own solutions, because otherwise we can't really grow anymore. We are at the limit of where we can grow to, but they don't really have the capabilities around business development, innovation, all those kind of things. And we have set up a pilot, and we are currently looking for the right students to join that pilot. So if any students are listening and are interested, please come forward with one company. In this case, it's Divatus here in Vaasa, and they have a product basically developed for one of their customers that they use for testing on different mobile devices. I'm pretty sure Andreas from Divatus can explain it a lot better than I can. But what we are looking into is finding students to run a project for them, to look into, okay, what are actually the right customers to sell this product to, how to market it, what is the value proposition, what are the different kind of channels, what is the right pricing strategy, and all that kind of stuff. And now I pressed the wrong button. But that's one of the activities, to not just think about startups and entrepreneurships from new companies, but to also look at what kind of small companies do we have in the region, and how, as a university, with the talent pool that we have, with the research, with the knowledge, with the expertise, can we support these kind of companies. Super interesting. We are piloting it, and we will basically, the aim is together with this company to develop the way of working, to develop how it works. But yeah, really interested how it will go. Hopefully we will find the right students to participate in that right now. And the students, of course, besides being part of a great learning experience, will get credit points for it. They will get a little bit of money from the company of it. And of course, if they do an amazing job, I would say Divatus would be stupid to let them go afterwards again. So it's also a great opportunity to step into the work life as well. So I think it's basically a win-win-win situation with a lot of benefits for the students to be part of. And hopefully that's something we can establish more in the future. Another thing that we have been doing, well, we all know there aren't that many startups in the Vaasa region that are really product startups. We have a lot of service startups, and the startups we have are quite often spin-offs of the big companies of Wärtsilä, ABB, Danfoss, etc. But there are some. And together with West Coast Startup, Jari is here from West Coast Startup. We have been coaching them. He has been doing it for many years, and we have joined his efforts to already coach them. West Coast Startup is a small incubator jointly by the University of Vaasa and the University of Applied Science. And yeah, he will also be here in the break there at that table. So if you have questions to him, feel free to go to him, and that's something we will continue working with. We also have the Vasa Entrepreneurial Society, so the student organization, so to say, about entrepreneurship that has been active in Vasa and that we try to strengthen. And Antti mentioned the grassroots movement. We will get there on the next slide. If I jump to the next slide, the planned activities. We have there, for example, the student-driven startup accelerator. We have seen it in Helsinki. We have Kenneth here with us today, who will, in the next session, tell us a little bit about the experiences around the startup sauna and other activities in Helsinki coming from Aalto Entrepreneurial Society. And we are looking into, together with the Vasa Entrepreneurial Society, how we can strengthen this kind of student-led activities around entrepreneurships. That's not the kind of old men, Antti and me and our lovely Leena, supporting all of them, but that it's actually the students who support each other and build this kind of network and grassroots movement and really fertile ground for innovation. Later on today, you will also hear in the last session one very, very concrete activity that we take together with the ecosystem. We said we believe in the ecosystem. So together with Energy Spin, Vasek and VExpo, we came up with a, I think, quite interesting and exciting approach, which we will discuss more in the last session. And there are a lot of other activities looking at it from a licensing and IP perspective, which we have to do in the future, really building this kind of technology transfer office. But also we are planning to build an open innovation portal where we allow companies to send their challenges basically to all researchers and students of the university, and they can respond, give their ideas how to support it, and all those kind of things. So a lot of really concrete, really, in my opinion, exciting activities that we are planning that should happen, let's say, in the next 1 to 2 years, depending on the funding, depending on the situation. But I think a lot will happen, and we will also, of course, try it out. We said we try it out ourselves in a startup mode. We try what works, what doesn't work. We pivot if it doesn't work, etc. So these are the first ideas that we came up with, that we actually have also co-created with some members of the ecosystem and with different members of the university. So I think that will be quite an exciting journey, and I hope we will see all or most of you on the journey with us to do that together. Here just an initial idea how the time plan could look like, that we start with a portal because it could be the one-stop shop for a lot of different activities. We have the events. We heard a lot at the university that actually the mindset is one of the big topics around starting entrepreneurial activities and starting innovation. We have Stefan here later today who is the expert on mindset and will tell us something about the growth mindset and different areas around that. So different kind of aspects to really from ground up build the activities, build the fertile ground to create a also startup ecosystem Vasa. I think we have a really amazing innovation ecosystem. I've worked in that with Wärtsilä, with the Smart Technology Hub, but I feel it's very much driven from the big companies, and the under layer of the smaller companies is lacking, and that really needs the support, and that's what we will try to do. Of course, in collaboration also with our colleagues in Helsinki, who are a step ahead of us, to learn from what they have done, to see can we copy with pride, or can we do it together and things like that. So again, that we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. But that's basically in very brief what our team does. Here are some of our ecosystem partners, and yeah, thank you very much. That was very briefly about our team and the exciting activities that we will have in the future. Thank you. And and now I can just stay here, because next we will have a little panel discussion around different topics. So I would like to ask Antti, Kenneth, Rathan, who am I forgetting? Stefan and Jussi. You are hiding in the back, so I lost you there. To the stage. We don't have enough microphones, so you will get the handheld microphones to reach around. Maybe I give one, you have one, and we give one to this side as well. Oh, I even have a place where I can sit down myself. I just have to quickly look what I wanted to ask the guys, so I actually asked the questions they prepared. Otherwise, we will see them struggling. All right, maybe I can start with a short introduction, or do you want to introduce yourselves? We can just do okay. I will just do a quick introduction. Let's see if I remember everything correctly. On the right we have Stefan Lindegaard, well-known innovation experts who has worked with big companies like Wärtsilä, for example, coaching, and has quite recently, or for some time, gone more into the mindset HR area as well, how to really build the right growth mindset to help large companies to enable innovation, to enable learning, and those kind of aspects. Really interesting stuff, and I've been following Stefan for quite some years now, and I'm really happy that finally we get to do something together, because we never got to so far. Then we have Jussi, who is actually working in this building, just over there at Platonic Partnerships, one of the startups. Can I still call you startup, or did you outgrow the startup phase?
I think we can call us startup.
Okay, one of the startups in the area looking at gamification and those kind of aspects. So maybe Ari, interesting for you. And Jussi actually came from the university, West Coast startup, that route until he found his own company, and is now also in the board of Suomen Economit. So made the transition from helping others to build their startups to build his own startup, and now representing the community in one of the biggest unions of the area of the country. Then we have Rathan over here, who actually has a very interesting story, because he did the opposite of what Ari did. He went from having a startup in Silicon Valley to the University of Vasa. He can explain himself why he went that way around, but a very interesting as well. And he is now working with the different cross-disciplinary platforms of the university as a project coordinator, helping the the collaboration with the industry and different projects, etc. Then we have Kenneth over here, who is working at Vertical innovation. Well, originally VC turned innovation consultancy from Helsinki, and as mentioned in the talk before, Kenneth has the background from Aalto ES and all the startup scene in Helsinki. He is the founder of, how is it called? It was Health Spa before. Upgraded, so the biggest health startup community. So again, quite interesting, and has coached hundreds of different startups in the area of becoming successful. And Antti and myself you know already. And I will just quickly again go through my notes. Sorry, as now I have forgotten everything. So the first thing I wanted to ask maybe from our panelists is, as I said before, I think we agree that the Vasa ecosystem has a strong innovation ecosystem, but somehow the startup scene is still quite small. We have some in the game development. We have, of course, some in the energy and so on field, but it's you don't have this kind of strong ecosystem around it. So maybe Jussi, we could start with you, as you went through that journey, building a startup here in the region. Just around your experience, how was it? How did it work? What were the challenges? What kind of support, and what worked well in it?
Well, first of all, I think Vaasa is one of the best places in the world to, start your own startup, because we have all the resources really close by. We have like 10,000 students located within like a circle which has like 1 kilometer diameter. So we have like a lot of talent here, and all the authorities like Business Finland, ELY, they are really close by. It's easy. You can approach people really easy here in Vaasa, and so we don't have this like barriers that you have to wait in line in order to get your applications handled, etc. But I think one of the downsides here in Vaasa is the big energy sector. In a way that all the focus has been on energy, and that has slowed down the process to start different all the other startup activities in a way. But now there's a lot of good activities happening. For example, what you guys are doing, it's really great stuff. West Coast Startup, VES, all that. It's really important to bring other ideas to the table too, not only energy. Because nowadays, tech can be, you can build world-class services no matter where, and why not in Vaasa? So I think that we had gotten a slow start, but now we are getting there.
And the others, if you have something to add, please don't hesitate.
Thanks. A little bit provocative, but the first statement you came with, that you think this is one of the best places in the world to do what you do, that's plain wrong. There's hundreds of places similar to this setup here. I've been to 30 or 40 of them around the world and seen them over and over. I'm from a small city myself called Odense. There's about 130,000 people in Denmark. And they're trying really hard right now to become the robotics hub of the world. And they're this close to succeeding. They're doing a pretty good job there, but they have some key advantages. You lack some key advantages here you can grow on. I'm provoking you a little bit, challenging you a little bit, that don't fall into the trap thinking that what you have here is unique, because it's not. And I think that we need to be a little bit direct on things like this one. We need to know where we are right now. And then we need to see how we can take the next steps, so the visions you have. I really think that what I've seen, that what the university is trying to do in a place like here, it's my first visit here. I've been in Helsinki many times, but it took me 4 hours to come here by train. I like train rides, but 4 hours was getting a little bit too long. But what you're trying to build and what you have here is actually looking quite good. Just don't believe you're unique. There are hundreds of places like you around the world. So it's what you do, what you have here with the Finnish spirit here. The more I dig into the country Finland, the more I get a little bit surprised, smiling. What the heck? What kind of people are you up here? And that's something I would dig further into, because you can do something in Finland so many other countries in the world cannot do, but you're not unique in the setting you have here.
Thanks, Stefan and Jussi, for that. But I'm not going to provoke anyone, but I'm just going to tell my own experience about how when I came here 10 years ago, how the innovation ecosystem was and how it has developed so much in the last 10 years. When I came here, I was also still I'm an entrepreneur, and I have the entrepreneur, let's say, mindset. So I was trying to find out different avenues to start up and to have something of my own and so on. And of course, I did find certain Wasa, Ely, and so on, but it as a foreigner, it also took time for me. Okay, of course, if you are Finn and if you are within the, let's say, known circles, known kind of network, then it becomes easier, yes. But at the same time, when you come from elsewhere, even let's say even from Helsinki or from Oulu, then it's a little bit of a challenge to kind of know the right people. So now it has become much more easier as the playing field has been leveled, let's say, so as to speak. So that way, it's it's improved quite a lot, and I'm really happy to see that improvement.
Yeah, I could also build on what has been said. So one needs to, of course, remember you asked in the beginning that why don't we have more here? Vasa is 1/10 of Helsinki in terms of population, and if we compare to what Ari said earlier, Helsinki is 1/10 of what he has within 50-mile radius. So compared to that, there are activities going on. Then I think the question is that how can you build on what you have and build on those strengths? So I think that, for example, energy, being one of those strengths, has probably enabled some activities to get started and be successful, but shouldn't be limited, of course, to only that. So I think the interesting question is how can you build these catalysts, like, for example, this space, that unless COVID would have hit would probably have been, and maybe have been as well, really a meeting place where new ideas can get formed and where people can start to build together. I think that this is what needs to be built on in places like this. Then, as Stefan said, it's not unique, so you need to find per se. So you need to find the unique aspects of Vaasa and why something can become successful here.
So one thing that we can maybe learn from sort of Aalto's experience is the fact that they had a very strong student grassroots movement in Espoo and Otaniemi. So what we are trying to do, and hopefully we succeed in it, that we can empower organizations like VES and the students more in Vaasa region to sort of ignite that grassroots movement, and that's what we are trying to do, and let's see.
And we will, of course, talk about the grassroots movement later, still in more detail. One thing that I still wanted to say is what I've also seen. It's in Vaasa a lot about the mindset of people as well. Actually understanding and seeing entrepreneurship as a valid career opportunity. That it's actually not crazy to build your own company and take the risk or the perceived risk to do it, etc. There are a lot of opportunities to do it, and I think many take the easy route, easy in the sense of the traditional route of going to the big companies in the area, and don't really understand or see entrepreneurship as a career choice for them. So I think there is a lot of education and mindset change to be done in the area as well to actually get this kind of thinking going, because I think there are a lot of bright people and a lot of great ideas, but maybe people don't pursue them enough.
And I have to add one thing to them, because I know I agree, but you have to in order to start things, you have to have this like you said, right, positive attitude. That's the starting point. And one of the downsides here is that people tend to, back in the days when I was running the West Coast startup, there were a lot of teams every year. Usually teams get new ideas during springtime. And then they started to, they want to develop their idea and started to build it, but because back then we didn't have any incubator here in Vaasa. So of course I told to them that you have go and apply to the startup sauna or give us Accelerator or whatever, because it doesn't necessarily make sense even to build, because Finland is a small country and we have to, use our resources smartly. And of course we have to, put all the resources together, because we are not competing with Helsinki in that sense, to my perspective, because I think that we have to help the Finnish startup scene. That's the reason I want to, guide the best people to go apply to the best incubators possible. So yeah. That's also one thing, that so people tend to leave Vaasa pretty easily. Usually they come from some other places here to study, and they're pretty quickly to leave. And that's a known problem, I think, here in Vaasa. That people or students, they don't necessarily stay here after they have graduated. So that's something that needs to be considered more. Mm-hmm.
I think you hit a very good point here. Is you have lots of talent here, but what happens if they leave, and when they leave? How do you get them to stay? And you talked about mindset. What I've seen, and the reason I work with mindset, is that leaders are usually pretty poor, bad people, are bad at leading and managing an organization, especially large organization. The more you can go in and work mindset from the top down and get the quote-unquote right mindset from the top down, it will trickle down. And it will get a better company, large company, or scale-up, or startup, or university, or scene like here. You have to change the mindset from the top down. But it's also so hard to do. Some elements you should work with is the trickle-down mindset from the top down. I talked about the new kind of mindset a leader should have. You don't have to have people in Vaasa or in Helsinki or in Copenhagen. It's a global talent pool. So what Jussi said here, if you can get better at keeping your good people here, at least some of them, and connect them globally and enact the right mindset in this setting here, you're onto something that could make Vasa a pretty good place to be 10, 20 years from now. But it's going to be a very long journey.
Mm.
One experience from the VTT days was clearly that in a research sort of based innovation setting, people are a little bit older, they're a little bit more senior, and in order to get ignited new venture creation in that kind of setting, you have to be able to show examples and reduce the risk of taking that path. So by examples, you can create sort of confidence to these people that, hey, this can be done and I can be successful. And by sort of concentrating and focusing on reducing that risk a bit more in that kind of setting compared to the sort of grassroots students setting is important.
Yeah, also to go with what Stefan said about the mindset, and it's not easy to change. I think what he said was actually on point about leaders not being great managers most of the time. So there has to be a platform for, let's say, like a good entrepreneur or like a one with great ideas would like to start up and do something to a certain point where it can be managed and taken over by let's say a group of people or some entity or a platform, so that he or she can concentrate on developing more ideas that they have or that they come up with to work on. So I think there has to be some kind of good place where you can some kind of an exit strategy that not, I mean, if there are like some investors or people putting in money, then it's also a good thing for them that, okay, there is an avenue to make their money back and so on. So I think as an innovation ecosystem, in Vasa, we don't, as I see it, we kind of lack that aspect a little bit. And that's something that we as a university can also like consider to take it up forward.
Mm. I think that when talking about getting people to stay, and this is something that Jussi also raised up, is we can't look just at startups and new companies to get people to stay. If we look at high growth companies, I think that it can be challenging for all types of these companies to actually find the infrastructure here where they could actually stay only here. But rather, I think it's important to also look at the large corporations, for example, and other types of players to have them involved in this, and really that way make it possible for individuals to stay on a larger scale. And then if we go back to, for example, again what Ari talked about and how COVID might have changed the mindset of people and organizations, is that thanks to this, working remotely, having locations all over the world in more distant places and more centrally located places, I think is more accepted probably going forward, which is an opportunity for example, I think Vasa and the corporations here and for organizations to find a specific type of individuals with specific types of mindsets here. So to build on that as a part of these activities, I think is very crucial.
Mm. Yeah, I fully agree with you, and it's something we also have been looking at, that we looked at, okay, not all the startups have to be founded in Vasa, but they can be anywhere in the world, but how do we connect them to Vasa in a way as well? All right. I still wanted to go a little bit into the topic, and we just have a few minutes, and I would like to leave some time for discussion with the audience as well. The different kind of organizations that are there to support startups. We heard before that from Antti, for example, that there are quite many in Vasa, etc. Jussi mentioned it as well. But what could be the different roles? What do you actually need, and how can they, if they have the right mindset, drive this kind of startup ecosystem, be it bringing up own startups or being attractive as as a secondary location for others, etc. Maybe we can start with Kenneth here, as you have seen it a little bit in Helsinki, how it went there like 10 years ago, from being quite scarce to becoming really a startup hub and startup scene. So
yeah, I was fortunate to be a student in Helsinki 10, 12 years ago when the entrepreneurship boom really started there, and I think that what really was the driving force in the beginning was inspiration from other individuals, from other locations, from other universities that then got Aalto Entrepreneurship Society started. So I think that one of the first things to look at is inspiration and individuals who can really bring that sort of be that superhero for example, students to look up to. Be that if you want to build your own company or success in a corporate career. Then if we look at other types of organizations, universities, for example, as organizations, what I saw was that they provided, for example, in the Helsinki region, provided infrastructure for, in this case, students to run the activities, get a home, so to speak, get the feeling of owning something that they could build, having that physical location taken care of. I think that was a very important driving factor. This was the venture garage, as it was called at the time. Then if we look at other types of organizations needed, I mean, you need investors. If we look at startups, you need money to actually finance these projects or companies. You need corporations, in my opinion, to be early customers or joint partners for joint ventures. You need other types of, for example, public support and mentors. So there are several types of organizations like these needed, I think. And that said, I believe that the key to success in that sense is not to have too much organizations, but rather give the freedom to individuals who really want to drive it, be it from VES, just as an example, or other organizations who feel that they can be successful themselves with the support of these organizations around them. So if we look at nature, ecosystems aren't planned, rather they are born and they grow and they develop out of what is necessary to survive and prosper. So I think that the same is the case also for ecosystems in this sense. And if we look at what I saw in Helsinki 10, 12 years ago, it wasn't planned. Rather, they were individuals with visions who drove it forward and saw what worked and built on that.
Thank you very much. Well, maybe we have one of the superheroes that the students can look up to here already. And we have, of course, some other interesting cases here. Any other comments to Kenneth on?
You said it right there, Philipp, supermodels. I mean, role models. If you're young, I mean, I got a daughter, 20 now, and I got one at 16, and they don't really care much about me as a dad. Teenagers and dads is not the best combination, girls. But they look at role models. They look at people they admire. They look at people they can learn from. They look at influencers. I mean, that's where you need to look into. You said, Jussi, that you got the energy sector here is in some ways holding you back. But in Denmark, it's exploding with this new term, the influencers. And they, being my age, I can look at them a little bit. I'm not sure what to think of this. But the young ones really dig into it. Supermodels, people like that, who do you have of those in Vasa? It doesn't matter they live in Vasa, but they need to have a strong connection to Vasa. And that's something you can build on. And then this strange Finnish mentality and mindset you have, if you can combine those things here, it'll be quite good.
All right. Thank you very much. We have officially 5 minutes left. Are there any questions, comments from the audience? Anyone? Yeah, I can bring you the microphone.
I was wondering, the idea of success is actually changing with different generations.
I can repeat the question maybe if it wasn't. It was just if basically around the definition of success is what we see as success. Is it the same as the next generations might understand under success as well? Any opinions on that?
But that goes into what I kind of talked about. The young ones have a different narrative than I do. I'm 50 now. I try to keep a young mindset, but yes, I'm 50 years old now. They think differently, they act differently. And look at the people here. I mean, especially in the panel here. How do you get the young one, the young narrative to play here? How do you build stories around this one? How do you connect with the people they actually look up to? It's a very important question you raise right here. But it's doable. We just need to make sure the people our age that is in charge on this one see the full picture and enable the young ones to get in and create your own playing field. And we also got it that it has to happen more organically, like the ecosystem, not as planned as we try to plan too much our age, and is my view sometimes.
You don't have a microphone anymore.
Yeah, in a way, organizations just have to keep out of the way of the young people.
6.
I think that's spot on. So it's really about trust. So what can you do as organizations being able to fund these type of activities? What can you do to remove the roadblocks, remove the hurdles, and give the trust to the individuals who want to drive it forward? You need to be able to create an organization that lives by itself. If you or activities that live by themselves, if you always need to fund it, if you always need to do the work, if you always need to plan it, it's going to die as soon as any of these factors get out of the question. So how can you really make it self-sustainable? I think that's a characteristic of a successful ecosystem.
Any other comments from the panel or any other questions from the comments from the audience? If not, then we are very well in time, because it's more or less exactly 2:45 when we promised our coffee break can start. So over there, the audience here will find coffee and some small snacks. And we will continue at 3:15 with Stefan Lindegaard talking about the growth mindset, the mindset and how it can drive the learning organizations, learning ecosystem, and all those kind of aspects. So thank you very much so far, and see you all again in 30 minutes, and have a great coffee break. I would like to ask everyone to take a seat. We will still have time later for more discussions. All right. We will first start the second half of our really great event so far with some words of our host of Sture, Ut, who has made all of this possible with the Vasa Future Festival. So, Sture, the stage is yours.
Of course, I am happy to see you here, of course. But I would like to stress that that's not important, that I am happy. You sitting here, listen to these presentations, these ideas, you should make sure that the whole city and the whole region will be happy after this seminar. And for that reason, I just wanted to have a very short welcome to you introduction from Vasa Innovation Center point of view. I hope that we, in the history books, can and are able to write that from today on, there has been some special impact on the development of the area and of the region. Why? Because I think this is the first major joint action point between Vasa Innovation Center and university. And there must be more. And there must be stronger. Why? Because I think we could have a joint ambition to together, we from our side with our method, you from your side with your methods, we should join together and transform the region. Transform the thinking in the public sector, transform the thinking also in the private sector, where it is necessary. And we should have a result, a completely new ambition set, not for Vasa Innovation Center's interest, but for the interest of the region. And part of that is, of course, that I also strongly want the university to grow stronger. Maybe physically it's not always so easy, but if not physically, mentally stronger. So welcome. Hope you have a good afternoon from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sture. All right, after this warm welcome and call to action from Sture, I would like to introduce our next, I call it keynote speaker, Stefan Lindegaard. He was part of the panel already, so I don't need too much introduction, and I'm sure he will introduce himself. But Stefan Lindegaard.
Thank you very much, Philipp, and thank you very much, Sture, for making this place possible. It's a great venue, and as I briefly mentioned, it's great to be in Finland again, and the first time here in Vasa. I was doing some research, just checking out Finland, the history of Finland on a train trip yesterday, and I was just in there baffled, shaking my head and smiling, because this is a very unique country in so many ways. I always thought Denmark, the Nordic region, was kind of unique, but I would say in the Nordic region, you Finns, you take it home. You are different than the rest of us, and I mean that in a very positive way. I mean, the results you created, given the history and the background you have, it's pretty impressive. My own background is that I've been working with corporate innovation for the last 25 years. So I work with leadership teams and corporate innovation teams in the context of how they get innovation to work. And I like to call it how to shape the future. And the opposite of shaping the future is managing the day-to-day activities. So you can imagine most of my frustration working with the corporate innovation team has been leadership teams who are very focused on managing day-to-day activities, and they didn't really understand how to shape the future and make innovation happen. So that's where I've been working for the last 25 years. And since I could see more and more that there's no way we can make innovation activities, innovation capabilities better in any organization, or a smaller one or a bigger one, without starting from the top down, About 10 years ago, I started to do more leadership development and organizational development work. And it was, as this actually kept developing my work here, and I've been traveling most of the world. I don't do much work in Denmark, it's international. But when I started doing more of this leadership development work and team development work, I always known about this concept called the growth mindset. It's actually started about 20 years ago by a Stanford professor called Carol Dweck. She wrote a interesting book called Mindset, in which she really introduced the rest of the world to these ideas in 2006. So the work itself has been ongoing for about 20 years. But it wasn't more, and I knew about it, but it wasn't more until like a year and a half ago when I really started to dive into it. How can it be that this idea of the growth mindset, the growth mindset approach isn't being adapted within the business community and within the organization development community? The growth mindset actually started with kids. I mean, 5, 7, 10-year-old kids, how do you get them to be better students? How do you get them to learn better? So it started with kids within the educational circles for many years and really got lots of fans, also some critics, but it really got some momentum in these circles. But it's not really that well adapted within the business community. And I decided that I want to look more into it, and now a year and a half later, I would say there's some challenges, but there's so much potential if we can work with mindset things like this, especially on leadership teams in startups, scale-ups, or corporates. So I think there's some relevant messages here for the Vasa ecosystem, and I'm just scratching the surface. Again, my work is work in progress, but I hope I can give you some insights, some inspirations, and also some suggestions on what you guys can do next in this great ecosystem you're building. So I have a fairly big LinkedIn platform that I use often. I post all my work there, and I use this one also sometimes to kind of test the waters. And 4 or 5 months ago, I asked a question, well, I've been digging with the growth mindset, but is it really just a buzzword? Is it a fad, or is it for real? I can assure you it's a buzzword. I mean, the interest in my work has gone like this since I moved away from innovation itself to go with the growth mindset approach. So it's a buzzword, one that really creates lots of interest. But is it here to stay? I think it is. The more I dig into it, the more I work with it, I think it's here to stay. And as you can see the numbers here, you got quite many people, organizations, where they're saying, this is something we want to work with. But again, it's a buzzword, and we can only get it adapted if it makes sense, if we bring value to an organization. Whether it's a scale-up or a startup or a large organization, we need to anchor the growth mindset approach in the realities of the leadership teams and the organization itself. That could be around leading people and teams. So leadership development, team development in general. It could be about how we create and develop organizational capabilities. There's actually some of the feedback I got from one of my surveys, and this is also the 2 key areas I'm looking into myself. My main product or service today is a workshop, which is the growth mindset for shaping the future, a team building effort, because I really, really believe that we need to start from the top down. So as we get in to talk more about the growth mindset, I'm actually a little bit curious. I mean, we got quite many people seen online, and nice to meet all you guys online. And we got a good group of people here. Just by raise of hands, how many of you have never heard about the growth mindset approach before? Anyone? A few of you? Kind of. How many have limited, some understanding of the growth mindset? By show of hands. How many of you say that you know a lot about the growth mindset approach? Anyone? Okay, yeah. So that's also pretty much how it is, that the understanding of the growth mindset is still fairly limited. People have heard of it, and people usually have a positive understanding of it. And it kind of comes by itself. I mean, the growth mindset is a positive thing. So people smile and say, yeah, I think it relates to me. But we don't have many organizations that actually work with this. And I'm going to take one of the world's largest companies, because they actually adapted the growth mindset. And we need to go a little bit back in time, because Bill Gates in the 70s, he actually founded Microsoft. And if I were to put some words on Bill Gates, it would be visionary, entrepreneurial. And then, quite interesting, also impressive, Microsoft only had 3 CEOs since it started. That's interesting and impressive, yeah. But Bill Gates created Microsoft. Steve Ballmer was part of that almost from the beginning or very early on. But something happened when Steve Ballmer became the CEO. And he was there, as you can see, for about 14 years. Because some of the keywords, 2 keywords I would put on Steve Ballmer and Microsoft would be control and closed. And what happened? I mean, Microsoft went from being this very rocket ship of a startup, the ones that everyone was looking at, saying, well, you guys make a ton of money and you make products that are so-so, but no one wants to work with you guys. No one wants to work with you guys. It's kind of like the brand Microsoft is kind of like fading down, especially with the rise of all the FAANGs and the super companies coming out of Silicon Valley. Something was off in Microsoft. They got a new CEO. It's already been 7 years when Satya Nadella took over. And he realized that something had to change from the inside out. Again, they were still making a ton of money, but something had to change from the inside out. And what I like about it, Satya Nadella in particular, is he's a very visionary guy on the organization. And Microsoft actually decided early on that they would go in and work more with the growth mindset approach. Again, 5-6 years ago, there was a still very early concept. But I have one sentence that Satya Nadella used quite often that kind of sums up what they meant with it. Because again, I said that the growth mindset as a concept can be used in many situations, but we have to adapt it to your specific situation. In this case, Microsoft. Microsoft's case was they had a bunch of know-it-all guys there. The Microsoft organization was know-it-alls. We don't have to go out there and work with outsiders because we know better than anyone else. And he really determined we have to change that. And his statement here, don't be a know-it-all, be a learn-it-all, pretty much sums up the ideas of the growth mindset approach. Don't be a know-it-all, which is one that I know what I can do. I don't really believe I need to talk with others. I'm the best here. I don't really care about learning because it's more important I show off how good I am because I'm really good. A learn-it-all is, you know what, I get into a room, lots of smart guys here. I might be the senior guy here, but I'm here to learn. Even on the top guy, I'm here to learn. So be a little bit humble, be curious, be open, create an environment where a term would be psychological safety, where people can speak up openly on mistakes, give honest and candid feedback, and learn it all. Be a learn-it-all type. So those are kind of like the two opposites. Microsoft used to be under Steve Ballmer a know-it-all organization, but now they've really become a learn-it-all. And the brand today, I mean, they're one of the hot companies again. So it worked quite well. I have a little note on my images here. They're not really slides as such, but I create these images for 2 purposes. One, I like to share my work. So if you want my images, just send me an email. I send you the deck or other decks. I have hundreds of these images on different topics. And I use them in a way where people can go in and look at the images and hopefully get some inspiration. So there's sometimes like here too much text on it, but it's because it's supposed to give you some pointers, some introduction. But also use them for presentation like this one. That's the second part. So sometimes there's too much there. But just a few key elements. When you look at this and when you start digging into why Microsoft really went into the growth mindset approach and how they did it, it was a top-down approach. They realized we cannot change the organization if we do not do it from the top-down approach. So it was starting with the leadership, the senior leadership and the leadership principles and all the way down. Microsoft is today the best known example of a large organization that's adapted the growth mindset approach. Another one which I find quite interesting is the United Arab Emirates, which is one of the most progressive governments. And I also bring this up because I would argue that the Nordic governments and Singapore and the UAE are some of the most innovative and visionary and progressive governments we have. And by all means, I mean, the UAE decided about a year and a half, 2 years ago to go in and implement a new administrational structure based on a growth mindset. And here you can see some of the 6 key pillars to work on here. Unfortunately, because of Corona, I haven't been able to visit my friends in the UAE and get some more insights on this over the last year and a half. But it seems like it's still there, although we don't hear much about it. So things are happening. But let's get back. What is a mindset and what is a growth mindset? And you gave me the hint that you don't have that much understanding of the growth mindset approach itself. But a mindset, well, it's very individual. You can go in and see the research here. It's kind of like a mental frame, a lens, and we use this to selectively, and that's the key, selectively get insights and organize insights and information. And this is actually what shapes me as a person. My view is based on the insights I get. So my mindset is actually driven by the things I get in here, and I have my own lens for seeing these things here. The challenge is that my mindset is different than yours. And it's different than yours and how you see things. And where it becomes interesting from a business perspective, a leadership perspective, is that when we start to understand that we shouldn't put people in boxes, but there's some key areas of mindset people can be in. When we start understanding that people are different in this context here, and when we can start get some ideas, well, they're more like this or this or this, then you can start to better understanding the behaviors that comes out of this one. Because that's one of the key elements here. How we actually get this lens up and running is going to guide our actions and responses, our behaviors. So the idea in my work is the more we understand about the mindset, the more we can see the behaviors. And then we can check out good behaviors, bad behaviors. What can we do to enforce and enhance the good behaviors? What can we do to stop the bad behaviors? If we take it more an organizational perspective, and that could be a large organization, but a startup, for instance, if you have a startup that comes to scale up, Jussi was doing like a team of 8 to 10 people, so they're going from a startup to become a scale up maybe. If you don't get the right leadership foundation, the right cultural foundation in place now, he's going to be in trouble 5 years from now. He cannot change it. And that means it has to start from the top. And why not go in immediately, going to create a culture, instill a mindset that is wired towards getting better, always trying to get better, rather than believing that you are the best and proving that you're the best. So this is the essence of the growth mindset, the approach, the work from Carl Dweck. And the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. If you look at it, you can see there are 5 key elements in the head here: obstacles, effort, challenges, criticism, and success of others. And then you can go in and use the framework here, the understanding, and see that when you have these 5 key pillars of the mindset, what decides whether you have a fixed or growth mindset is how you react to these 5 elements here. What I see most often is how people react to criticism and feedback. Most of you have been in meetings or one-to-one discussions where you're trying to give feedback to others, where you might even have to criticize others, and you've seen how people react very differently in these things here. That's the one where you can most clearly see whether people in one area or the other area of the mindset. They get much more negative if they have a fixed mindset. Whereas in a growth mindset, it'll be more positive in the sense like, well, okay, I don't like what I hear, but I take it in. What can we do about it? How can I grow from this? So that's the one I see the most often, but those are the key elements here. There's some myth on the growth mindset here, and especially when I've been engaging with smaller companies, growth companies, I had some discussion with executive leadership teams there where I said, we don't need the growth mindset here because have you seen our revenues? It's a hockey stick. We're going like this right now. We're growing like crazy. Look at all the money. We're not making money, but we're at least selling a lot. Our revenues are up the roof. And I had, well, easy now. The growth mindset is not about growth per se as an organization, as in terms of revenues. It's how you grow your people. It's how you grow your organization. So that's one thing where I sometimes need to calibrate people a little bit. And the other one, that's very important. You don't have either a growth or a fixed mindset. It's a hybrid. You have something in between, and the reason it becomes in between a hybrid, it's situational. There are just some things you do better than others. I can ask you guys here a very simple question. Is there something you just can't do? Will someone help me out? Anything, something you just can't do? I mean, I could say 5 years ago I've said I can't dance. I'm sorry, I can't dance. How about you guys? Something you just can't do?
Well, 50 push-ups would be a challenge.
To do what?
50 push-ups.
50 push-ups would be a challenge, okay. But it's a challenge, but you're not saying you can't do it, because it would also more be a question of, yeah. But you wouldn't try. But that's also the thing here. There's the difference of whether you just can't do it, I can't do it, or it would be a challenge to do it. When I 5 years ago said I can't dance, it was not true. I mean, I can dance. It's not beautiful, but I can. I mean, I can do some dance moves. Another thing, I'm not creative. That was another thing I would say 5 years ago. So 2.5, 3 years ago, my daughters are pretty good creative, and their mom is very good at drawings and painting and things like that. So they inherited some of her talents, and they work with her talents. So my oldest daughter and I were kind of like sitting there, how can I make some different presentations? And I said, why don't you draw some good things for me? And then I kind of like, I could use them in a presentation. Yeah, and this is where we are today. But the thing is that she would actually sit there and draw what I told her to do. In the transition period, 3 years from now, and remember I said I cannot draw. But today, I taught myself, and I had the mindset saying, of course I can draw. I actually like drawing today. And I actually do like maybe 80, 90% of these drawings myself today. I wouldn't have been able to do that 5 years ago. So it's very much, again, I said earlier, I'm 50 years old now. One of the main challenges I have as an individual, how do I stay curious? How do I develop my own mythology to always stay curious? And that is to challenge myself on things like that. So again, some myths in the growth mindset, but there's nothing you really can't do. It's just more whether you want to do it or not. Whether it's going to be something that looks really ugly, but you don't really care, you improve. But there's not that much we can't do. Let's try to do a little test here. Do you have a fixed or a growth mindset? I talked about the 5 key elements, the challenges, the feedback and the criticism, how you deal with obstacles and success and mistakes. I would like you guys to spend very quickly, read through, and then you go in and grade yourself from 1 to 6. 1 is low. You don't really think you can do this. You don't deal well with this. 1 is low and 6 is high. There are 5 questions, and then I would like to hear what scores you're going to get. It's a very, very simple exercise, and you've got about 1 minute to do it. We don't have much time here, but again, you can get all my slides and images and do this exercise yourself and with your team as well. But anyone who actually scored like 24 to 30? Some guys did here, great. People are nodding, yeah. Did someone actually get more like 12 to 18 in the lower end? You don't have to raise your arm if you don't want to admit it, but again, it's not a fixed situation. It's something you can change. It's something you can work with. And that's also why I like the growth mindset approach. You can work with this. And basically it's more about how you think than your capabilities. There'll be some physical capabilities we cannot do much about, but mentally we can actually go and work with this one. The reason I use this small quick exercise right now brings me to my next point. When you have a team and you work with their growth mindset, there's a challenge here, the personal challenge. There's a tendency, I've done lots of these exercises now, people always rate themselves fairly high. So up to 30, let's say the average in this room would maybe be a 25. But what if you actually been asked that, now you rated yourself and you gave yourself a 24, pretty good. So yeah, you have a growth mindset. And you said, hey, 26 or 23 or 20. So yeah, so we gave ourselves a fairly good rate. But now look at your colleagues. Look at your leadership team as a whole. Grade your leadership team as a whole. And then you start rating them. Now we're not talking about 25 or 26 or 20. We're talking 18, 19, 17 maybe. And that's actually one of the big problems we have with growth mindset. People rate themselves fairly high, and then they rate others fairly low. And when we're trying to work with people, change people, we talked about changing behaviors at people. We got a problem here because if people feel I don't have to change, but others should change, that's not a good start for a learning process. So that's one we need to be aware of. And then the other two things is we need to put this into a context and into an application. Once you start getting deeper and deeper into the growth mindset, you need to find a way to work with the situations as well. How do I do this? Again, it's work in progress, but I'm working what I call the growth wheel for teams. And I have these 5 elements. I go in and look at the mindset of a team, the shape and pulse, the communication, how they learn and how they network. Those are the 5 key elements I've seen over and over the last 25 years that I think make sense to deal with when I want to go in and take a leadership team and hopefully try to move them from they've been very good at managing day-to-day activities, but they're fairly poor at shaping the future. That's 80-90% the situation in all leadership teams today. They're very good at managing day-to-day, but they cannot create the future. If I'm going to try to work with them to change things, these are the 5 key areas I go in and deal with here. So the mindset is some of the things we talk about here, the growth mindset. And then the shape and pulse is what is actually going on with the team right now. I'm going to show you a few examples of this one. One of them is actually work the stakeholders. This kind of taps over. And the reason I mentioned this one, work the stakeholders, is more because of the rhythm in there, the what's in it for me question. So when you look at people, leaders in particular, but people in any organization, whether it's a corporate, university, academic setup, or it's a scale-up or a smaller one, we need to realize one thing. People don't really care about the company. They don't really care about the university. They might care about the team they work with because they got some personal connections and feelings and they actually say, hey, this is my team, I want to work with them, I like working with them. But they don't really care about the big company as such. The way you can look at this one the most is that you can go to the same job, you can be pretty much assured you're going to have some good colleagues to work with, but I'm going to triple your pay. Are you going to move? Of course. That's how it is in the corporate academic world today. I mean, get better opportunities. The one thing that's really important and something we can go in and measure and also try to understand better because it drives our behaviors as well and taps into our mindset. It's the what's in it for me question. If we want to make changes happen, we need to map our ecosystem, our stakeholders, and we need for the key people in such an ecosystem to understand what's in it for me. If you, for instance, take some of the key people in the university where the team here is trying to change these people here, you can feel like you're running against the wall over and over and over again. And the reason being that that person might be in a situation where they have people usually have one, maybe 1.5, what's in it for me, career life goals, things they're trying to go towards. And if what you're trying to get them to do doesn't align with their what's in it for me, they're never going to buy in with what you're trying to do. So our challenge is, in a team setting, to understand the different what's in it for me for this team, because then you can better help each other. It's okay with a leadership team where one of them openly says, I'm only using this as a springboard to become a senior executive, maybe even a CEO in another company. If that person can be open about this, and the other people say, well, you're going to be here for like 2 or 3 or 4 years. Let's get the best out of it, and let's help each other. Now we're talking about psychological safety in a team. If you can start working with things like this one, that team at the end will work wonders. And again, the trickle-down effect to the rest of organizations will be useful here. So the what's in it for me question is something I work quite much with. The T-shape. What is your T-shape? IDEO, some years ago, IDEO used to be a very famous design innovation agency. We don't hear much about them today anymore, but 10, 20, 30 years ago, they're really top of the pop, and they have some very interesting ideas and beliefs. But the T-shape kind of builds on this one. And the idea is that if we're going to contribute, especially towards shaping the future innovation, we need to really have something in depth that we can contribute with. I need to know very much about smart energy technologies, and within this I'm very knowledgeable about technology element here as well. Or maybe I'm very knowledgeable about China. Or it could be I know very much about leadership. Or maybe you know something about software development that is very, very deep in this way here. But it doesn't matter if it's all you can do. What we need to look at is the T-shape. We need to really be able to contribute deeply in one key area, but we need the empathy, the horizon as well, to understand the other functions, to value the other function, and see the full picture. 10 years ago, engineers were really crappy at innovation because we didn't have this development in the sense that engineers often thought that I'm very good at my engineering field and I don't have to care about anything else. Things have changed. We moved from technology and R&D to innovation. And innovation is more about putting things together in different kind of ways, in different combinations. And if you only know technology and don't care about anything else, we're not really going to be able to work with you. You need to be able to have a T-shape. So knowing your T-shape and your strengths and having the leaders of your team, of your organization, know the T-shapes is something valuable to work with. Have the hard conversations. I was being a little bit provocative when I said that, hey, stop guys, this is not the best place in the world for trying to build an ecosystem. We need to be candid. We need to create the psychological safety in organization to be candid. And having hard conversations is one of the main reasons that leadership team become dysfunctional. This research in MIT go and say there's the think but dare not say, feel but cannot name, say but don't mean, do but don't realize. And you can use this methodology approach to go in and map out how your team actually communicate internally and have the conversations here. And giving better feedback is another example as well. We talk very much about ecosystems in some of the other discussions today and presentations. How many of you guys have been trained to become a better networker? Have you guys received any formal training to become a better networker? Better relationship builder? That's a big mistake. And just by me asking you this question, you can feel it's, hey, I missed out on something here, right? And if you argue that one of the key elements for your city, for the university, for the ecosystem building is relationship, and no one trains you to become better networkers, better relationship builders, there's a misalignment here, and you need to address that. So it might come as a surprise to you, but I'm a very introvert person. I mean, basically, statistically, about 30% of our population are introverts to some degree. I'm a very introvert person. I'm a kind of guy who likes to stay home. I don't go to dinners. I just stay more or less by myself and very close circle of friends. How can I do what I do now then? Because I've trained myself to turn on the switch. I can be a very effective networker. I can give talks and other things. But I can do this because I've trained myself to become a better networker. And that's something you need to look into as well. How do you actually become better at relationships, networking in the ecosystem here? So there are the 3 forms of networking, other things you can go into, and this is also where it tied into the growth mindset. I would go in and make some assessments of your networks, because one of the problems with the networks you have today is geared towards the past and the present. Your relationships today, people you spend the most time with, are geared towards the past and the present, not the future. When I say future, 3 years out. You would be surprised when I do my exercise. I go in there and tell people, well, what can you see of the pictures you get here in matrices like this? And they see, well, I have so much focus on today, managing today's activities based on the past relationships. I don't have room for making the right connection to shape the future. That would be a fairly simple one for you and your team, Philipp, to train people to become better networkers. Think more strategically about these things here. That's one of the elements I work with as well. Again, how does this tie into a bigger picture? Because the growth mindset approach cannot stand by itself. It needs to lead to something that's bigger. And for me, it's more about how you create a learning organization. And a learning organization is something you can do, whether it's a startup where you're trying to build the foundation, the pillars of the company that maybe if you want to be a growth entrepreneur, will have hundreds of people 5 years from now, thousands of people maybe. But you need to build the pillars now. And that is the right time where you're a startup company on the edge of becoming a scale-up. That's where you, your leadership team, need to go in and become and define what you will become for the future. And I hope you'll aim for becoming a learning organization. So it's pretty hard to see here, but it's the framework I'm looking into right now. This one is quite early work in progress, but it's personal value, organizational value, because we cannot separate the two things here. It's about purpose, it's about organizational impact, operational impact, and business impact, elements like that one, and how you get started. So if you're going to work with the growth mindset, to go more into it, again, we're just scratching the surface here. You need to have a bigger purpose with it. It cannot really stand by itself. That's one of my key lessons for a year and a half now. Drop that one. You guys sitting here are mostly here as individuals, and maybe you've been intrigued to learn more about the growth mindset. If so, send me a message. I'll send you some of the resources, some of the links I have. I happily share this one. You will, of course, Google it when you get back, and you start picking up how can you actually develop this for myself. Personally, I find lots of joy and value in combining two concepts. It's the growth mindset approach, which, again, in many ways helped me on my creative side, which is where I went from saying I'm not creative at all in terms of dancing or drawing. I can do these things here. But even more so, it helped me to find a process and actually having a road forward to always stay curious. Getting to be 50 years old and not just laying back and say, hey, I'm going to be working for another 30 years. If I'm going to be relevant 25 years from now, I need to be able to stay curious. That's one of the things, one of the main elements I get out of the growth mindset. It helps me get the right thinking in this place. Another thing I then work with is the ikigai. And it's a Japanese concept meaning the reason for being. And it actually works with these four circles here. What you're good at, what you can be paid for, what the world needs, and what you love. And very, very few of us will be in the middle of this one, the ikigai itself, the one there in the middle. That's where they all intersect. But we should all try to get at least one of these areas here. I mean, if I can get what I love to do, my passion, and connect with something the world needs, and I can be paid for it, I'm a pretty happy camper. Ari was a very good example of that. He's actually getting pretty close to an ikigai because what he changed during the corona is that he changed the thing that he doesn't really have to be in one specific place. So he got a grade 9 from his kids now. So he's actually getting what he's loved, what you're good at, what you can be paid for, what the world needs, and he aligned that with what you call that, his personal life, the work-life balance as well. So it would actually make him feel he's probably pretty good to the ikigai. So consider where you are at, and more importantly, how you can change things to move into a new direction. I presented lots of stuff here. We got like 10 minutes for Q&A, right? I hope I gave you some inspiration, some insights. if you're up for it, I know you Finnish are very quiet people in this way, but I have a small feedback exercise, and I want to use it in about 8 minutes' time. It's very simple. I will just take a look around here, and I'm going to ask you for your key takeaway from what I talked about for the last 40 minutes. Your key takeaway, if there's been like, aha, this is really interesting, this really caught my interest, or a key takeaway, but you're going to tell me and the rest of the audience in just one word or one sentence. I'm going to get back at the end here. It's a good way for people to see, do you actually align on some of the same key takeaways here? But before then, open questions, if any. Yeah, just get the microphone.
How does this growth mindset idea sort of transfer into building teams? Building like startup teams, do you need to populate the team with different mindsets, or do you see that in a startup team all the people need to be growth mindset people, or does the CFO, does it have to be sort of
two things on that one.
With the different mindset in order to keep the other people, like the visionary people, in bay in certain situations. So how do you see that?
Two things. One, the leadership team itself need to go through some of the elements I talked about in the growth field, the 5 elements here. They need to get aligned as a team. And the reason being, if they're not aligned and actually doing quite well on these things here, you will not have a positive trickle down to the rest of the organization as it grows. So you need to put in the work on the leadership team. Do you know why it doesn't work in a startup or scale up? They're going to use the excuse, we don't have time for that. I mean, I would argue that startup executives and leadership teams are more busy than big corporates, in the sense that the things they're doing are more urgent. In my world, a startup doesn't really innovate much. I mean, early startups is do or die. I mean, if you don't succeed the next 6 to 12 months, you die. You're out of the map. What happens if a senior executive in a large company, you get fired at worst, or you get a new job? I mean, they will tell themselves as a leadership team in a startup, we don't have time for this, we're too busy, and they're too busy getting the product in place, getting customers, or talking with VCs. That's one of the most critical mistakes you can do. If you don't carve out time to start building your organization, not at the beginning, but especially at the tipping point from going from a startup to scale up, you're going to be in trouble 5 years later. The reason I've seen so much frustration in large organizations is because they got organization death. They've been doing shortcuts on organizations for the last 5, 10, 20 years. If a startup do the same on the organization development, you're going to have another boring company. And I promise you, there are very, very few founders, when they start their babies, their lifeblood, none of them think of this is going to be just another boring corporate 10 years later. It's not what they aim out for, but it's what it ends with. And we need to stop that by addressing this earlier. The other thing, how you hire people. You need to go in and work in different ways on how you hire people. And startups is kind of easier because people who want to work for a startup do it more because of the passion, because actually part of the ikigai elements. Is this the right place for me to be at? I mean, can I do good here? Is it really what I love to do? So it kind of helps here. But you still need to go in and make sure that, especially when you cannot hire startup-minded people any longer. What happens when you cannot hire startup-minded people any longer? You hire people from the corporate world or from the consulting world. And most of these people are contaminated with the fixed mindset. So you need to go in and actually create a methodology, a process to weed out the fixed mindset people as you start hiring people as well. So one, leadership teams, the other one, how you hire people in the hiring process. Other questions? Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, now. So I had a question about the team model. So the depth like goes like here, but then like these days when you see that some of the depth, like or the skill sets which are listed under depth, it goes into the horizontal. So if you have a team which has like, let's say like which have been listed as depth, let's say like 10 years ago or even 5 years ago, being a manager, you need to have a specific skill set.
The T-shape is more individual. It's not a team.
Oh,
T-shape is individual.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. So I was thinking about like more as a team.
But that's where you can tie it into a team. How do you make sure you actually got the right balance?
Right.
You would be in trouble if the depth areas in the 5-man leadership team were all the same things.
Right.
You would definitely be in trouble. But you also need to look at what are the key elements you need to cover in this team here. And that's also where you do the networking exercise, where you, either your team itself or the networking, do you actually have access to the knowledge you need to know about? I mean, I and others talked about AI. How many in your leadership teams or in your network know enough about AI that can give you sufficient information to get better at these things here? So it's more, you can use it in terms of balance.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was looking at the Ikigai and I was a little bit skeptical. Can it really be applied to work-home, like work-life balance?
Anything about personal development is personal. So it's what you make into it. I mean, for me, it's a guiding light. It's more like a North Star. It's more like what I try to get to and achieve. Does it work as a data-driven process? Not at all. I mean, the same as a growth mindset. I mean, I met with a VC team about a year ago, and they said, there's no way this is going to work because you don't have any data to back up the beliefs you have here. But that's also one of the challenges we have with Ikigai and growth mindset. You have to believe it, and you need to adapt it to your situation. If you're an individual, young individual trying to figure out what you want to do in your life, then you can go in and use the Ikigai and say, I really want to work with this because I love it. But when you realize there's no way you're going to get paid at it, there are going to be some consequences here. So should I change and go and find another spot, or should I keep doing this because I love it and then don't really care, don't get paid for it? And what if I do here, there's really not much need of it in the world? I mean, so I'm going to sit home and just do this for myself? So it's more like a direction for you, and you can use in that context. Does it make sense? Okay. Yeah. One more question, maybe? Okay. Let's go back to the feedback. So it's actually very simple. You don't have to, but I hope some of you brave Finns will step up. And you're going to share your key takeaways, something that really struck a nerve with you, or, aha, this is really interesting. But you're going to share this with the rest of the group here in just one word or one sentence. So it's very simple and it's not going to harm you at all. So anyone over here would like to share their key takeaway, aha, in just one word or one sentence? Just speak out loud. I'm going to repeat it. Is it on?
About these impact levels, so there's different categories, business impact and organizational impact, and these were very interesting.
Good. So that you need to focus on these, and we had a talk earlier, but yeah. Others? Yeah, okay. 2 already? That's pretty good, actually.
So I think growth mindset is about sort of curiosity to learn.
Curiosity is a big element of this one, yeah.
The T-shape.
The T-shape, the idea of the T-shape. You don't have to say it only if you have something, yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if you said it or showed it, but I take it as takeaways. Value other functions.
Value other function, the empathy other function, so building on the T-shape, yeah.
Yeah, planning too much in head. That's at least something you said earlier, and it kind of relates also to the same thing you said in this presentation as well, that we plan to and organize some stuff, and the changes happen much more faster.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that goes a little bit to the age, right? Because we know so much that we can actually see more things where younger people and people in startups, they just dive into it and just go ahead. So yeah. Other key takeaways? Yeah. You guys are good at this.
I would say the growth mindset is not only for those laying out the strategy of the company, but for the company as a whole, for all employees.
Yeah. And this actually ties into what you can use it for. It cannot stand by itself, but you can use it in how you define and develop your organization. So a good point there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also think about that when you said about actually growing an organization, not only revenue-based, but growing the people inside the organization.
It's a good one, yeah. Okay.
Just challenging the mental barriers that I cannot do, so now I can think like I can do it.
Okay, yeah.
Staying hungry for knowledge.
Staying hungry for what?
Knowledge.
Yeah.
Self-evaluation, because you have to realize that you are in a fixed mindset.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, that was very good. I mean, I usually try to gather things together. I heard a few things about the T-shape, but I also like how you sense that the growth mindset is something you can use across an organization. So, and I hope when you listen to each other like this, that maybe you can see something. How can you move further on this? How can you use some of the things we talked about here? Some of the key takeaways. How can you connect on this in your ecosystem and take some next steps under the structure that you're developing? And again, I was saying you're not unique here, you're not world class here, but I actually think the framework I've seen lots of these frameworks all over the world. What you're trying to do here is actually quite good. I like storytelling too, I like narratives. So using the metro map, I actually took a picture of that because that's a good idea. So you get a story. That's one thing. You need to build a narrative, guys. You need to be able to tell someone like me, what's the reason you should interact with Vasa? I don't buy it that people should come to Vasa and live. It's a waste of money getting people to come and live in Vasa. It's not going to work. Talented people have so many options. Vasa will be 18 or 19 on the list. It's not going to happen. But you need to spend the money to get people to connect with Vasa and stay here. And what's the story for that? What is your specific story? You need storytelling. So thank you very much. I look forward to stay in touch, and thanks for listening. And Philipp, it's great finally to interact. Thank you. So.
Thank you, Stefan. Thank you. All right. I hope now we all know how we have to learn and how we have to develop ourselves further. And actually the next session is a really good example of what we have heard before, because when we started in our team, Antti and myself made the mistake we wanted to plan, or we also went into and wanted to plan everything. And then we started interacting with Kenneth and the team from Vertical around it and learned about what happened in Vasa. And they were telling us more around these kind of, we have to give freedom to the people and just build like a play field for them so they can play in a safe environment where we have removed the barriers. And I think that really stuck with us, and it's something that really changed our mind and our approach, how we want to approach it. So through that, this kind of grassroots movement that we have been discussing about came up several times. And in the next session, we would like to discuss a little bit around this grassroots movement together with Kenneth and with Jussi, who you know already, and also Tia Maria joins us now as the chairperson of the Vasa Entrepreneurial Society, and we will just talk a little bit about what does it mean to have a grassroots movement of innovation, and what does that enable among ourselves. I will try to collect some microphones for you. I have 3 and 6. 3 and 6. This time I will sit down with you. All right. So, grassroots movement of innovation. I said already, it came up first in the discussions that we had together with Vertical, with Kenneth and his colleagues. So maybe we can just directly dive in with Kenneth. And what does it mean for you, a grassroots movement of innovation? What are your experience with it, and how did you convince us that it's the right way to go?
So personally, what I mentioned in the previous panel, I was fortunate enough to have been part of the entrepreneurial movement that took place in Helsinki 10, 12, 13 years ago. So that's my touch point and sort of starting point for this. For me, a grassroots movement essentially is to me it means similar things as an ecosystem. So something that starts from a real need. It's driven by people who are inspired by it and want to see it succeed. It's not controlled per se, but rather there are different types of players who sort of support it through different means, remove roadblocks, and this way get it functional. So that's how I see a grassroots movements personally.
Thank you very much. And what have you seen happened in Helsinki about the grassroots movement of entrepreneurship of innovation?
That's a really good question. I think that the key word here is inspiration. So if I look back at what I saw happening, was essentially that there were individuals who were inspired by what was happening in other universities, and I think that where a lot of the activities around entrepreneurship that we've seen in Helsinki can be connected back to is the Aalto Entrepreneurship Society. So I think there's a lot of credit that needs to be given to them. How I saw it was that, and where it got started was essentially being inspired from Stanford. So there was a group of students who visited Stanford and were inspired by the entrepreneurship societies in that region and wanted to see something similar in Finland and in Helsinki in that case, or in Espoo to be very precise in this particular case. And they started building on it. So they took the initiative, and there were individuals who believed in them. So I think that one of the key things that happened was that the university gave them a space to operate from. So they had something that they could call a home. And this is essentially, I think, one of the key sort of pivoting factors as well, what enabled this movement to get started in that region. And from here, they were also very experienced business professionals. We saw many entrepreneurs who started to have their own success stories. This was 2008, 2009. And they wanted to be part of it. So they joined as mentors. They didn't come there to control, but rather they came there to share their experiences. And this then enabled these young individuals who didn't have much formal experience to build on these experiences. And I think that what also was part of the boom and why it started, why we saw an upswing in entrepreneurship globally was the downturn in economy. So if we look at history and economic theory, often you see entrepreneurship upswing when you have a downturn in economy, and it's something that I think played a factor in that case. Then from here, so we had essentially a situation where there was Aalto Entrepreneurship Society driving a lot of activities. For example, an accelerator program. They had an incubator space. There was an event a small one called Slush at the time that they took over from a couple of individuals and started to build on. And this inspired then others. So we have again the keyword here, inspiration. And we saw other universities, for example, or students in other universities form entrepreneurship societies in their own environments. We saw organizations like what I did, for example, myself, founded a health-focused community called Health Spa at the time and upgraded today. Essentially, we were inspired by the gaming industry, where we saw that there was a lot of collaboration that then sort of helped each organization in the community to prosper, and we wanted to do the same for the health industry, and we were inspired by the Aalto Entrepreneurship Society. All of this, in the beginning, there were corporates involved as well. So that's another important factor, I think, of a well-functioning ecosystem today. There were corporates, but at the time there were no models for collaboration. So there was a lot of sponsorship, and that's an easy way to get started, at least how we saw it. So they came, they supported, they paid for the catering to get people together, and they get to follow and sort of understand what is happening. And then there were investors joining in, of course, and they are usually what then drives the entrepreneurs to come as well. If we speak on a general level in an ecosystem, and then public support. I think that what should not be forgotten is the public support given by both the cities and the government to, for example, the activities around slush to really make it happened. And all of this together, I think, created then what we can see today, being a part, not anymore a boom or in an upswing, but rather a systemic part of the business environment in the region of Helsinki. And I think that we should build on the learnings from there when sort of building these activities here, not try to copy everything, but rather understand what worked, what didn't. And then build from there.
When you say that these different players came together, was that you mentioned it has to grow organically, but did the corporates and others just organically gravitate towards the students, or was somebody trying to orchestrate the matchmaking basically in the background?
I think that there were both. So in the very beginning, if I look back at 2009, 2010, I think that it was more from if we look at the students' perspective right now, trying to find sponsors, so trying to find somebody to pay for the organizing of events, for example. But from the corporate's perspective at the time, they started to see new technologies, for example, being developed. They saw interesting new services, and they wanted to understand what that means. So that got them interested to come. But as I mentioned, there were no models for collaboration per se. There were no role models or examples of what had happened or what could be done. And when we started seeing these, it moved and became more systematic. Now, of course, today there are organizations like Vertical that systematically supports organizations to work together and to understand how to build benefits from each other. But I don't think that we saw in that regard these organizations at that time.
Jussi, you are a bit further away and the barrel is between us, the big barrel of Vasa. I know that you in the past have looked at the grassroots movements and how to drive more the startup scene and so on in Vasa and get students active and all those kind of things. From your perspective and based on what we heard, what happened in Helsinki, how does that reflect on your experiences here in Vasa?
Well, I have to agree with Kenneth completely, because actually when I was studying in the University of Vaasa, we didn't have anything like anybody to talk with about entrepreneurship, or we didn't have any like activities regarding entrepreneurship. Now, it was really frustrating for me. But then when later on I got a chance to work with university when I was running the business incubator West Coast Startup here. Like Kenneth said, we were copying. I noticed that there were a lot of like interesting grassroots movement happening in Aalto, especially they founded Aalto AS. And I talked with people from Aalto AS, and I thought that this is something that we need to have here too. Now, then we were lucky enough that we had like a few good students who were doing actually their trainee period with us in the organization I was working back then. And I knew that they had like a large contact networks within students, and they had this like a drive within them. I knew that they could handle them, and I contacted them and asked would they be interested in about starting this entrepreneurial society here in Vaasa. And that's actually how it got started. I introduced them introduced them to people here in Vaasa and other elsewhere, and I then just stepped aside, and it's because it's important factor that you have to give them freedom. In a way, if you want them to succeed, if you want students to have their, they have to build the stuff their way. And but you need like a sponsors or not monetary sponsors, but like we have discussed here, like someone to look up to, have like a successful entrepreneurs or someone idols in a way. And then you need someone who opens the door, just enough for them to be able to go through there and start doing their thing. And of course, the really important factor is the psychological safety, in a way that you can try stuff, you can fail, you must learn from it, but you can still carry on and nothing, harm done in a way. So, and I think it's a really, really good job that Wes has done, and I think it's definitely the right way to go forward with strengthening the grassroots movement here in Vaasa, to give students more freedom and enable them to do their thing. It might look different than it looked a couple of years ago in Aalto AS or elsewhere, because times change, and nowadays new kind of new ways of doing things and new ways to develop your software or whatever you're developing. So it's a good thing to bring in new students and with new ideas, new focus, and at the same time keep your university researchers close by, so you can ask for direction. You can let them have this formal or non-formal discussions about certain topics. That's also important to connect researchers and entrepreneurs and all that support network around students to help them. Don't push it to them, but help them to if there's a need.
Give access.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jussi. And Tia Maria, you are currently the current chairwoman of VES, or the Vasa Entrepreneurial Society. How does it feel from your perspective? How does it look from your perspective? What activities do you have right now, and where do you feel, one could do more, one should do more, or what kind of support do you think the students would need to be more active or build more of this grassroots movement?
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me? It's on? Yeah, okay. Our roots are, of course, in the Vaasa University, but one of the great things about VES is, of course, that we are trying to kind of bring together all the higher education in Vaasa. And I think that is one of the challenges also, that we are trying to improve every year, to engage more with all of the students from all the different schools, because we are so kind of built into the Vaasa University through our history, so that's at least something that I would really want to improve. I know that we have other ES organizations in Vaasa, so I know that VAMK is doing an ES program, so they have international students doing entrepreneurship society activities, and then Hanken, for example, has their own. So I think one of the things I want to do is kind of have more synergies between the different organizations as well as the schools. So for example, our former boards, they have gotten funding for different initiatives that they have done. So for example, we had the Canvas launch kind of platform, which was also created to be this idea incubator for people interested in entrepreneurship, to offer them mentorships, help them with funding. And that was kind of something that came from our board members and went from there. But then we've also worked with Aalto AS. So currently they have the similar funding that just ended this year. It was extended to the COVID. That is, I think it's called YOOP. And it's basically how we could get credits for our members for the entrepreneurship skills that they are developing with us. And that's also something that I would like to see happen more, because the practices between schools, they vary very drastically. Between cities, of course, but also in the Vaasa area. So every school has a different policy on what you can claim as credits, what you can do, what you cannot, and how you do it. And many students are not aware of how to do this. So that's something that we aim to help them with, but that could also call for more collaboration between schools, not just through our organization. So I think those are at least some of the things that we can do to improve and to help our members, but also the other students in the area.
Thank you, Tia. And of course, we have been discussing quite a lot, as you have been basically born from the University of Vaasa and adopted the other universities as well, which I think is really good and really important. As I usually say, Vaasa is too small to compete with each other within Vaasa. And of course, we have been discussing quite a bit that we also want to strengthen the Vaasa Entrepreneurial Society. Yes. And I think we will continue working on that. And one of the activities, you mentioned the Canvas launch, which was the incubator. One of the concrete activities that we have been discussing would be a student-led incubator, similar to the Summer of Startups, Startup Sauna, but a Vaasa approach to it. And we are looking into how we can get funding, maybe even hire a full-time person, because one of the challenges and advantages of the Vaasa Entrepreneurial Society is that the board changes quite often, let's say it like that.
It's almost annually, depending on the members, of course, but yeah, that does pose some additional challenges sometimes.
So, to get continuity in the task we are looking into, if we can hire somebody that can work through the Vaasa Entrepreneurial Society or something like that to organize these activities. So I think we will see more, hopefully from our side. One of our aims is to enable and empower the Vaasa Entrepreneurial Society a lot more in the future, and we invite everyone else in the region to do the same thing, because we heard from Kenneth and Jussi how important it is to have this organic growth.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that even though we have our roots at the university, we are not as visible in the university as we could be. We do course collaboration with the lecturers and all that, but I think because we don't have our facilities, for example, at the university precisely, especially for new students, it could be difficult to find us at first and to kind of see what we can offer. So bringing it more kind of a visible part of the collaboration with the university as well, it's very important. For our continuity as well, so that we can find new members and new recruits and new volunteers for our events and concepts. Because what we need is the resources that the people can provide, but also new ideas, and that requires new blood to the organization.
Yeah, and of course, as Kenneth said, the facilities were one of the key enablers for whatever happened in Helsinki. So, and with the new campus project at the university, hopefully there will be on campus some place where we can drive these activities also forward. And of course we have this great facility if we need more space in the future as well. But it looked like, Kenneth, you wanted to comment something on what Tia said.
No, I was just going to support as well what she said, and one thing that came to my mind is that while you have, and this came from also that you said that you will try to find funding to hire a full-time person. What I saw being really helpful for upping the game, so to speak, for Startup Sauna, for example, was that they did have a paid, very experienced business professional to actually be the head coach of each of the programs, and this enabled them to move from sort of move to the next level, so to say it that way, to be able to give support in business development and strategy development to these startup companies, which wouldn't have been possible with just students in the organization. And finding funding for something like this, I think, is something that could be a valuable thing to look at.
And we have, of course, been discussing with West Coast Startup and with others that jointly we can coach the teams as well, but we still need somebody to run the operations, basically, and it's too much to ask somebody to do voluntarily, just besides their studies or besides their normal work or something like that. So that's also the thinking behind it, and I think hopefully that can be one of the concrete actions that when we come together next year again here, we can discuss about the success of the first student-led incubator or something like that. That would be really great.
And just to continue on that topic, so how, for example, Summer of Startups works was that the city of Espoo, at least in some of the programs, they sponsored two salaries for students who drove and coordinated the program. So it was essentially a summer job for a couple of students to run it. And this is something that could as well be looked into. Is how could that be possible? Not to control, but rather to enable.
Yeah, not to tell them what to do, but to give them the money and the freedom to do, to not have to worry about something else. And our thinking was as well we have heard it before as well, that many ideas come in the spring. I don't remember who said it. Many ideas come in the spring, and then people leave in the summer to their summer jobs, and that's where the ideas die. One of the thinkings we also had, if we do it over the summer, have some sort of money that we can allocate to each team, so it's actually their summer job to develop their startup. That it's not something they have to do instead of a summer job or on top of a summer job, but hopefully we will find the funding that it can be their summer job to develop their startup, and we can provide the funding for it. All right, we are almost out of time already. This was very quick when you have a good discussion. Jussi, or you still would like to add something?
Well, I think that it's a good thing, Kenneth, like you said, the place is really important, because, for example, we have an office space here in Vasa Innovation Center, and we have our game company. We have like 3 other game companies there, which are small, like 2 of them are like one-man companies, but we have like a sub-rented our office space for them, because we want to, especially in games industry, we have seen that collaborating with other companies, we are not competing with each other, we are competing against the world. In a way, now all the Finnish companies game companies are doing more or less doing the same thing. So it's really helpful to have other people who are like-minded, but still have like a different backgrounds in a way, or working for different organizations, but still you can go and just ask for, hey, could you help me with this and this? So it organically brings these advantages, which are really hard to, do otherwise. So it's really important to have your own space where you can collaborate with each other and talk with people similar mind and interest topics.
Yeah, if I can add to that, actually we do have our office space currently for West as well. It's on Wolfintia. It's not directly at the university, but it's quite adjacent. But I think it would be even more beneficial if we can share it with, like you said, like-minded people, or if there would be other players involved in the space, because, for example, currently we are, of course, relying highly on funding and volunteering, so making the space functional, it's not really that easy, and I think that the functionality is really important among the people that are there. So hopefully once the collaboration with the universities continue, especially with the Vaasa University, that there's some kind of solution that we can better utilize our current spaces, but also have some common spaces to work at. Because I think that the spaces in the Vaasa area, those are in high demand when it comes to collaboration, and there are not that many available for any students in any school. So if we have the space for that, it can really help bring the people together.
If I may just still add as well in the end here, if I look at this from the municipality's perspective, from the city's perspective, from the university's perspective, why look into this? So, and why support this? Entrepreneurial skills and skill set, I believe that this is not just about creating new startups. Of course, that's important as well. But these skills that entrepreneurs have, these mindset that we talked about, that is the fundament for what corporations overall, what organizations will look into in just a few years of time. If we look at how research and development is developing, innovation is developing, business development is developing, these are the characteristics of the individuals who people want to hire. These are the characteristics that the university wants to develop in their students, that the city wants to have in their inhabitants and the municipality. And that's why I think these are activities that should be supported also by by the public sector and by the university and so forth, not just for the startup activities, but for the larger impact this will have in the region in the years to come.
Thank you. Perfect final words for this short chat that we had. Thank you very much, guys. I think really, really interesting insight, and we will definitely continue driving towards more grassroots movement, enabling our and the students of the other universities to create a really great ecosystem and fertile ground for innovation here in Vaasa. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. All right. I think that was the first one very concrete action that we are planning for the next year. Sture challenged us to come up with concrete things that we don't just talk. And I think in the last session we have another very, very concrete action that we have been planning. And for that I would like to ask Mauritz, Marko, and Kristian to be on the stage. The others are thirsty. They need a little break. They've been talking so much. Is it back on? Yes. I can hear myself. Great. Thank you very much. All right. You want to sit down? Then I sit down as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we are old men. We have to sit down. Not the youngsters anymore. All right. As I mentioned before, I will just do the introduction to this. One very concrete action that we came up with. Actually, this group of people came together quite much as a coincidence. There was a program started by the Nordic Council or something like that for an innovation collaboration with Israel, where we got together with the Israeli innovation ecosystem, startup ecosystem like Startup Nation and the likes. And we all participated in that to learn more about what Israel is doing, as Israel is extremely successful, of course, in the innovation and startup field. And I think we all felt the same, that Vasa could need more, and we wanted to look at how does a maybe comparable country to Finland like Israel how did they become so successful at it. So we all, I think Marko invited me to it, but the others participated quite individually, and then Mauritz had the great initiative to actually said, hey, let's have with the participants in this from Vasa an individual chat. So that's how this group actually started, more out of coincidence than any plans, which fits quite well to the theme. It just grew organically together. And from that moment we were discussing quite a bit around, okay, the Vasa innovation ecosystem, the Vasa ecosystem, how we can work together, what all of our organizations do, what we are looking into, what our aims are, etc., etc. And well, when I wrote the program for this, the name that I came up for this session was it needs a village to grow a startup, based on, you need a village to raise a child, that you need many different people to support you in that. I have a 1- and a 3-year-old, and I know very much that you need a lot of support. And we have discussed startups might need a lot of different players to take barriers away, to help them with different aspects. So we're actually looking at that and we're thinking, hey, wait a minute, we all are different organizations who have different things to offer to a startup in the region, because we do very different things, and we see clear synergies, and we all see the need to improve the startup growth in the region. So why don't we just do something together? And I think actually Mauritz came up with the original idea behind this, and we all others loved it and developed it further from there. And the original idea was, hey, why don't we start a small competition for startups in the region or startups that want to connect with the region, as we heard before as well. And we select one or as many really good ones we can find. We don't want to limit ourselves. And then we give them all the support, full focus on these startups for a year from all our organizations with the different things we can offer to them. It will help the startups tremendously to get the support from all the organizations, and we will soon go into what these organizations can offer. But also it will allow us to build, and that came then as a follow-up idea, to build some kind of package, toolbox or whatever that we can have the Vasa startup package, or however we want to call it, that we can say, you're a startup in Vasa, you're a startup that wants to relocate or work with Vasa. Here is a package of support that the region, the different players of the region can offer you to help you build and grow your business. So that was basically the idea that we all came up with. And no, we don't launch the startup challenge to find the right startups today, but we will start the detailed planning today after just coming back from our summer holidays. And that's, I think, a very, very concrete action, having 4 different organizations, Energy Spin, the University of Vasa, VASEC, the Regional Development Agency, and V-Expo helping the companies exporting their services from the region, coming together, building a joint support package to really provide end-to-end help for startups in the region. And very important to say, this is not exclusive. It's not us 4 and it has to stay us 4. If anybody else thinks they should be part of it, they have service to offer that startups might want, might need, you're very welcome to join us. We want to build a package of the ecosystem that can help anyone, any startup in the region. And to get to the concrete aspects of it, what does it actually mean on a concrete level? We start with the university. We start with me. Why does the university want to be part of it? I think we have heard it. University, entrepreneurship, society, there are clear linkages. Strong entrepreneurial network, Kenneth just said it perfectly, supports the university, supports the region, gives new employment opportunities, more learning opportunities for the students, and it just uplifts everyone and multiplies and builds synergies. So it's quite obvious from the university perspective that if there is a network like this, we have to have a strong role in it. And what we can offer is, of course, access to subject matter expertise. We have high-level research at the university that many of these companies might need. We have a talent pool of students. Think about, for example, this kind of projects that students could run in terms of business development for startups and things like that. And we can surely think about a lot of other things. We have our team. We have the innovation and ecosystem team with people who have coached and developed startups many times in the early stages, so we can support in the product market fit and all those kind of developments, customer research and all these kind of aspects. So I think it's very important for the university to be part of this. We have a lot to offer to the startups, and that's why we are around here. Let's go. Who wants to go next? Marko.
All right, thanks. We are running Accelerator, which is a corporate accelerator. It's a multi-corporate accelerator, and we are focusing more on the scale-up stage, because the corporates, they're looking some companies which they can directly more or less implement to their operations or work with. And if you look at the startups in general, they are too early. Okay, thanks. Perhaps I'll start again. So we are running a multi-corporate accelerator. It's an energy tech industry. So we basically scout around the world the best startups which then can work together with our corporate partners. The problem with comes that our corporates, they are looking more into the scale-ups. the companies which can directly with their products will be implemented, and the piece which we are missing is the startup part, how to actually help them to come and work together with the corporates. And there we need others to work also, let's say, go further with the development of the product and so on. And that's why we find it very interesting and important to have this kind of activity around the region here. What we can offer to them is that we have quite good connections with the investors, founders on other places around the world, and we can bring those ones together once they start traction with their product. What we have, for example, latest we have run 3 programs now, 3 years now, 5 programs, hundreds of applications around the world. Basically, very seldom they are from outside, let's say, from this region. The most of them come outside the region, and they are most likely even from abroad. This year's program, which was COVID-based, a little bit different, none of them was even in Finland. So that's kind of a situation we are at the moment. I've been seeing how the, let's say, West has developed. I've seen the industrial spirit here and entrepreneurial spirit here. So it's extremely important to raise that one also from the grassroots. So that's why I'm really into this one, and it makes common sense to work together.
Yeah, and you of course also have all the company connections in the region to open doors for the startups, scale-ups, when they are ready.
Yeah, once the startups are ready enough, our corporates here are more than happy to take them on board, but of course it takes time to get the results from that perspective.
Yeah.
Should I go next?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So Vasek has been name-dropped a few times during the day. The full name is Vasa Region Development Company, Vasek. But many or some of you might not know what Vasek does, but it's an organization. It's owned by 7 municipalities, and we have several different tasks. But I'll just mention one of them today, and that's helping companies. So we kind of help with the foundations of how a company works, and we are already paid, so we are always free of charge for all the companies in the region, and we help from the beginning until the end, the whole life cycle of companies. So we have about 600 people walk in every year who want to start a company. About 180, at least last year, of those then start a company. And a good reason why they come to us is the success rate, or how many of them are still alive after 5 years. So if you just start a company, about 50% survival rate, but those who come through us, it's about 90% after 5 years. So that's a good reason to come through us. But also every year we have about 1,200 companies that we help. But quite basic stuff, fundamentals, marketing, bookkeeping, bank stuff, and insurances, and these kind of stuff. And that's where we help. So a bit the boring stuff, but the things that are really important to be able to stay alive. But also to name drop more things, most of the things that have been mentioned here today, West Coast Startup, Vasa Entrepreneurial Society, VES, and Energy Spin, and there were also a couple of other ones. And we have been there supporting, creating, funding, and participating in steering groups and so on, in all of these. So we really want to see this kind of startup ecosystem being created or start working, and that it would really be a healthy kind of ecosystem, and that it would be kind of booming. And we want to be in these processes that help out this. And we know very well of the positive effects that you can have if you have a working startup community. So we really want there to be support these, and but we kind of traditional business advisors, but I think we have a lot to offer when it comes to early stage startups, and when it comes to all this fundamental stuff, but also when it comes to financing, finding support, and so on. And yeah, so I think we have a big role, and we really want to see this succeed here, and we think there's a big potential and a big opportunity. So we want to see more startups in Vaasa.
Thank you, Mauritz. Kristian, last but not least.
I can continue. So few words about VExpo, as Philipp also said, that VExpo Force is helping Finnish companies with export and internationalization. So of course, why we think this is much needed and why we want to be a part of this is that, of course, we hope that we can attract and create more startups so that they also can grow and bring more exporting euros, not only to the region, but to Finland as a whole. And that's, of course, really important. We also know that startups and companies, Finland is usually quite a small market for them. So in order for them to grow and compete on a global level and compete with the best, they will have to go international at some point. And that is, of course, our core strength. So this is why we think it's so important. What we bring to the table, so to say, is, of course, that we can help these companies with the internationalization process. So with individual startups, we can get them access and information from different markets and different industry internationally. Of course, the key is to give them access to our international partner network, where they can find customers, partners, different stakeholders really, and help them manage them. And of course, through our platform, the Nordic Hub, where we focus both on cluster and cluster collaboration and development, then of course we also hope that we can bring this to these ecosystems and clusters that we do have in the region to make sure all cluster representatives as well have the right tool sets to work with going forward. But I think it's been said today already that we could have more startups in the region and we could work as well. So I hope this brings us to the level that we can go past the kind of traditional triple helix model and bring in the startups and also then capital to not only help the startups grow, but that will also then boost the other companies in the region, the other clusters and the whole ecosystems that we have in the region already. So yeah, for our part as well, of course, super excited to be a part of this great group, and yeah, as Philipp said, hopefully we have some interesting success stories to talk about the next year when we meet up back here.
Absolutely. So what does that all mean in practice? It means we four, with any of you who wants to be part of it, will get together very soon, plan the details, and will rather sooner than later launch a Vasa Startup Challenge, where as a region we try to find the most promising startups for growth. And as said, we don't limit ourselves how many startups we will select, at least one that we can promise, but we don't want to leave any great ones out just because we have a fixed number that we want to fulfill. So we will launch this kind of challenge rather soon, and then hopefully we will get quite some great applications, not just from Vasa, but hopefully also from Vasa. And those startups will get the full support of the different organizations and hopefully let them grow. And it will give us as a group the opportunity to better understand what kind of support do the startups actually need. Can we provide them? Do we need to invite somebody else or is there some support that nobody provides? So is there some new capability we have to develop in the region, and where would that capability best sit, etc. So to really do and develop the support for startups in the region at the same time. We don't just want to sit and plan, we want to do and learn while doing, and by that change the services we can offer, add new services, etc., to really build a holistic package that can be needed in the region to support the startups. So, having said that, I think, are there any questions or comments from the audience? Stefan, some microphone.
Good work, guys. I was smiling a little bit when I saw the title of this session. It takes a village to do a startup. But I mentioned earlier that you need a narrative, you need a story and a strength point. And I actually think you have something here you can work with. It's the village, it's the city of Vasa that makes this possible. That could be something you use for your storyline as well. You're all together in this. You're a small community, everyone knows each other, and you pull in the same direction. It's a good story. I mean, it takes a village, it takes the city or the village of Vasa to make this happen. And people from the outside world with some kind of connection to Vasa, you should reconnect with your hometown, and everyone should join in. It's good work.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
It's not a question, but it's a comment. I mean, I wish there was a setup like this when I came here when I was new. So unfortunately, there wasn't like this, but I'm really glad to see it like now, and I'm glad I'll be also part of it. Yeah, it's a great initiative, I think.
You can still come up with ideas. There
yes,
is still
course.
time.
That's the whole plan. So now there's a support system, so that's good.
Yes. All right. Then, thank you very much, everyone. I think this session and also the entire day was interesting for you, and you learned something new, and I really hope that some very concrete actions come out of it, and that in a year from now we are sitting here and we are at least one step further. We all learned it's a long journey to get there in the end, but we have to take the first steps towards it. Thank you. Thank you. All right, that takes me to the last point of the agenda. If you want to, feel free to join us at Box Corner for some drinks. Unfortunately, maybe self-paid, but we will figure that out with Sture later. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for everyone being here and online. And also the recordings will be available afterwards through the Vasa Future Festival YouTube channel, but also through the university channel. So if there is something you want to watch back, something you missed, you can find it. You can find it again. And otherwise, have a great rest of the day. Feel free to reach out. If you want to be part of any activities, just come to us now, drop us an email, whatsoever. Thank you very much. Have a great evening, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.